I can't hear through these things. Yeah, we're going to go for the C variance first. Everybody ready over here? All right, we're going to begin the meeting. Would everybody please rise? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Old Bridge Township Board of Adjustment has been provided in 3 ways. It's been published in the News Tribune. It's published. It's online on the website, and it is online and posted in the municipal complex at least 48 hours prior to the commencement of this meeting. I welcome everybody to the Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting for September 15th, 2022. Before we start the meeting, I'm going to just make a couple of quick announcements. We are televised live on cable TV 15. I believe this is all. I think this also goes to YouTube, which will be late. It does, right? That'll be available probably at a later date. So if you're going to testify this evening, please keep in mind we have microphones up here, particularly if the public's going to come forward. We're going to ask you to speak into the microphone. We're going to ask you who you are, and the board attorney would swear you in. The professionals all know this. I'm giving the benefit to all the people here tonight. Many of you may want to speak about an issue I don't know, but or you might just be here just because you want to see me tonight. I'm not quite sure. Either way, we will continue, but moving forward, and this would be more for the professionals. We schedule 7:30 to 10:30 on our rules and regulations, and moving from this meeting on, we're going to ask the professionals to try and limit their testimony until 10 o'clock, at which time we're going to ask them not to interview, or I should say, have any further witnesses testify. We're going to try and get time for public portion and closing statements from attorneys when there's a continuation. So we're going to try and put that into effect. We'll see how that works. I'm not dead solid on 10 o'clock, but we're going to try and do that in fairness to the attorneys. I'm not going to interrupt somebody, but we'll ask them not to put on someone after 10. And I've consulted with the board attorney, and they feel that we have every right to do so. So we're going to try to see if we can do that. I want to make one announcement also, and a congratulations. In the all-around Old Bridge paper today, right on the front page, it's South Old Bridge Fire Department will be celebrating 75 years of service on October 8th. And Fire Marshal Tom Hart is from that district, and they're having a celebration coming up on October the 8th. I don't know where that is. It's at one of the schools? At the high school. And from my personal thanks, and on behalf of the board, thank all the men and women of South Old Bridge for all they do to protect this town, as well as all the other fire companies. But congratulations on your 75th. Ms. C, could we have a roll call, please?
Chairman Sullivan.
Here.
Mr. Connor.
Here.
Mr. Stoner.
Here.
Ms. Chevalier.
Here.
Mr. Scogno is absent. Ms. Andrews.
Here.
Ms. Testaverde.
Here.
Mr. Psychowski is absent. Mr. Clancy.
Here.
Ms. Shapiro.
Here.
Ms. Savant.
Here.
Mr. Dargy. Present. Mr. Proska. Here. Mr. Hart. Here. And myself, Ms. C. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. C. For the benefit of the attorneys, the first application is going to be just the C variance. That's last on your agenda, but going to be first tonight, and get that out of the way. We'll then proceed with 2G Poor Farm, followed by RD Management. Board members, item 3 is minutes. Minutes of June 2nd, 2022. Hopefully everyone has had a chance.
That will be carried.
I'm sorry?
That one will be carried to the next meeting.
We're going to, all of them?
The June 2nd one.
June 2nd one. Okay. July 21's though. Okay, right?
Yes.
All right. As to July 21, 2022 minutes, hopefully everyone has a chance to review them and offer any comment or suggestions for additions or deletions. And if there is none, I'm going to ask someone to move for adoption.
Chevalier to move it.
Chevalier, is there a second?
Second.
Testaverde is second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor.
Yes.
Mr. Stoner.
Yes.
Ms. Chevalier?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes. Board members, as the same as to July 27, 2022. I'll move it. Is there a second?
Honor, second.
Honor seconds. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Ms. Chevalier?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes. We move to item number 4 on the agenda. It's resolutions. We have 4 this evening. 09-2022Z. It's Esmalian Acevedo Sanchez C&D variance. Mr. Clancy. I don't have a copy, but may I have yours, Ms. C? Bear with us one moment, please, folks.
Okay, this is a resolution of the zoning board regarding D and C variance relief for Esmolin Sanchez Acevedo, application number 11-2022Z, approval D1 and C variance relief. Be it resolved that the zoning board of the Township of Old Bridge, County of Middlesex, the applicant, Esmolin Sanchez Acevedo, has filed an application to the board for D1 use variance relief and C variance relief for the property known as 343 Route 34 Old Bridge, New Jersey, otherwise known as Block 3231, Lot 17, on the tax map of the Township of Old Bridge. That's the property. Whereas this matter was subject to public hearing before the board on July 21st, 2022, whereas the applicant has complied with all the jurisdictional requirements in order to prosecute this application, and whereas the applicant was represented by Eric Berger, Esquire, and whereas the applicant presented 2 witnesses testifying in support of the application, Megan Kurgum, the general manager of the business, and Allison Coffin, a professional planner, and whereas the applicant is a tattoo business known as Chakra Tattoos, and the property is within the Park Plaza Shopping Mall in the Economic Development Opportunity EDO-1 zone. The Park Plaza site contains 5.86 acres and 2 one-story multi-tenant buildings. The applicant's business, Chakra Tattoos, is one of the tenants of the building located closer to Highway 34. And whereas the applicant previously received use variance relief pursuant to NJSA 40:55D-70D to permit 1,600 square feet tattoo and paint studio at its current location. And whereas the applicant is now before the board to expand the existing tattoo and paint and sip business from 1,600 square feet to 3,000 square feet, the applicant proposes to expand into 2 adjacent spaces in the strip mall that were previously a restaurant and a barber shop. There's some bulk variance relief here regarding the minimum area ratio for landscaping and the minimum front yard setbacks. Whereas because the applicant previously received the use variance approval for his existing use because he now seeks to expand his business, a use variance is now required for the applicant to take over the additional adjoining tenant spaces to expand his business. And whereas the board, after considering all the evidence and testimony presented on behalf of the applicant, has made the following findings of fact. Number 1, the applicant has previously received use variance approval for his existing tattoo business and is before the board seeking additional use variance relief to expand his business in order to take over 2 adjacent spaces next to his business. Number 2, the applicant's professionals testified that the hours of operation for the business is generally between 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. Number 3, the applicant proposes no alterations to the site and will remain for retail use. Number 4, the applicant's professional testified in support of the application that the expansion of the business will benefit the Township of Old Bridge and that it is a business that is growing and will hire additional staff. Number 5, the applicant agreed that as a condition of approval, the applicant would comply with all the recommendations and requirements of the Township's planner's July 21st, 2022 review memorandum, which is attached here to and made part hereof. Number 6, The matter was open to the public, and no one from the public testified with regard to this matter. So whereas the board finds that the use variance can be granted, as it will not substantially damage the public good and will not impair the zoning plan or the zoning ordinance. The board further finds that the proposed use is consistent with the intent of the master plan, the land development ordinances, and carries out the general purposes of zoning to promote general welfare because the proposed use is particularly suited for the location, and as it is an expansion of the current business and will not result in substantial detriment to the public good. And whereas the board also finds the variance relief can be granted in that bulk variances are existing conditions on the property that cannot be changed in order to come into compliance with the zoning ordinance. Now therefore be it resolved by the Zoning Board of Adjustment, the Township of Old Bridge, on the 15th day of September, 2022, that the board hereby confirms by this resolution the action taken by the board taken on July 21st, 2022 meeting, granting the application for Esmelin Sanchez Acevedo for use variance pursuant to NJSA 40:55D-70D1 and bulk variance relief pursuant to NJSA 40:55D-70C, subject to the following conditions. Number one, the applicant shall comply with the recommendations of the township planner contained in the July 21st, 2022 review memorandum. Number two, the applicant shall comply with the representations made by or on behalf of the applicant during this public hearing. Number three, the applicant shall pay taxes, fees, and required escrows which may be due and owing. Number four, the applicant shall secure any and all other approvals, licenses, and permits required by any other board, agency, or entity having jurisdiction over the subject application for the property. Be it further resolved that all representations, commitments, and agreements made by the applicant or its representatives at the hearing in this matter or contained in any document submitted to the board with regard to this application will be considered as conditions of approval of the application for development and is hereby incorporated in this resolution by reference. And then we just have the how it was moved and how it was voted upon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clancy. Just as a matter of record, Misty, the resolution says the application number is 11-2022. Our agenda says 09-2022. Could we just verify which is correct?
It should be 09.
Okay.
Okay, we'll correct that.
We'll correct on the actual resolution that the application number is 09-2022Z. Board members, you've heard the resolution. Someone want to move for adoption?
Chevalier will move it.
Second.
Chevalier moves, Stoner second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Ms. Chevalier,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. I apologize, Ms. Andrews, I apologize, you can't hear between these, so I didn't hear you say that. All right, we'll move to the second one. It's 14-2022Z, Town Center Associates, Inc., major preliminary and final site plan with the variance. Mr. Clancy.
Yes, this is application number 14-2022Z for D variance relief for the Town Center Associates. Be it resolved by the Zoning Board of Adjustment for the Township of Old Bridge, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, board that. Whereas the applicant, Town Center Associates Incorporated, otherwise known as the applicant, has filed an application to the board for use variance relief pursuant to NJSA 40:55D-70D for major preliminary and final site plan approval for property located at 3899 Highway 516, otherwise known as Block 14263, Lot 4.11 on the tax map of the Township of Old Bridge, whereas the matter was the subject of a public hearing before the board on July 27th, 2022. And whereas the applicant has complied with all the jurisdictional requirements in order to prosecute his application, and whereas the applicant is represented by Robert J. McGowan, Esquire, and whereas the property contains 6.48 acres and is in the Town Center Main Street Business District, TCD-1A zone, and whereas the property contains a retail center with multiple buildings, including a building which previously contained a Walgreens pharmacy, towards the northeast corner of the site and the associated parking, and whereas the applicant proposes to convert the former pharmacy building to a child care / daycare facility. And whereas pursuant to the current municipal zoning ordinance, daycare/childcare facilities are not permitted in the Town Center Main Street Business District Zone, and therefore the applicant was directed to apply for a D1 use variance. And whereas in support of the application had David Erickson, professional engineer, and Justin Osciello, professional planner, testify in support of the application. And whereas pursuant to the municipal land use law, childcare centers for which upon completion a license is required from the Department of Human Resources pursuant to 30:5B-1 shall be a permitted use in all non-residential districts of the municipality. And whereas an inherently beneficial use is a use which is universally considered for a value for the community because it fundamentally serves the public good, promotes the general welfare, and whereas as a result of the application being inherently beneficial use, the application presumptively satisfied the positive criteria for the use variance, need not satisfy an enhanced quality of proof for the negative criteria. Whereas the applicant's professionals testified before the board using the 4-point balancing test, the zoning board evaluated the negative criteria to be weighed and evaluated the positive criteria as well. The applicant agreed to a condition of approval to comply with all the board's review memorandum, the township planner, the township engineer, dated June 2nd, 2022. The applicant's professionals testified that trash enclosure will be sprinklered and will comply with recommendations and comments of the fire official. Whereas the applicant further agreed as a condition of approval that bollards will be placed along the play area where the existing drive-through area of the facility is located. Whereas the board, after considering all the evidence and testimony presented on behalf of the application, did the following findings of fact. The application, number one, the application is for an inherently beneficial use. Additionally, the board finds there's no detrimental effect in granting the use variance, and there's important public interest at stake in granting the variance. The applicant will comply with the township planner, township engineer's review memorandum, thereby making positive improvements to the site. And the variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and will not impede or interfere with the zone plan or ordinance. Number two, the matter was open to public comment, and no member of the public testified with regard to the application. Number three, the board finds that the applicant has met the burden for the granting of the applicant's request for variances so as to permit this inherently beneficial use pursuant to NJSA 40:55D-70. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Zoning Board of Adjustment, Township of Old Bridge, on the 15th day of September 22, that the board hereby confirms by this resolution the action taken by the board on July 27, 2022, granting the application to Town Center Associates for a D1 variance subject to the following conditions. That the applicant, number one, the applicant will comply with the recommendations of the township planner and engineer according to their July 2nd memorandum. The applicant will comply with the recommendations made by or on behalf of the application during the public hearing. Number three, the applicant shall pay all taxes, fees, and required escrows which may be due and owing. Number four, the applicant shall secure any and all other approvals, licenses, and permits required by any other board, agency, or entity having jurisdiction over the subject application. Be it further resolved that all representations, commitments, and agreements made by the applicant or its representatives at the hearing in this matter or contained in any document submitted to the board with regard to the application will be considered as conditions of approval, and the application for development is hereby incorporated in this resolution by reference.
Thank you, Mr. Clancy. Board members, you've heard the resolution. Someone want to move this for memorialization?
Move it to approve, Connor.
Connor, is there a second?
Second, Stoner.
Second, Stoner. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Ms. Chevalier,
Yes.
Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. 32-22, 2022 is the Aldercrest Development Corp. Major Preliminary and Final Site Plan with D variance. Mr. Clancy.
Yes, this is a D1 variance, C variance, and design waiver relief for Aldercrest Development Corporation. Whereas the applicant has filed an application with the board for major preliminary and final site plan approval with use variance relief pursuant to NJSA 40:55D-70D1, bulk variance relief pursuant to NJSA 55D-70C, and design waivers for the property known as Block 9000, lots 41.11 and 22 on the tax map for Old Bridge. Whereas the property contains Glenwood apartment complex and is currently wooded where the disturbance is proposed. A portion of the lot in the A through F apartment family residential zone, and the other portion located in the OG-2 Office General 2 zone. The applicant proposes to construct a maintenance shed/garage on the portion of the property that lies in the OG2 zone. And whereas the applicant is the owner and operator of the Glenwood apartment complex, and the proposed maintenance shed/garage will be used for storage and as an accessory to the apartment complex. And whereas the applicant requires a use variance because the subject application is for an accessory use/structure/maintenance shed or garage, and the principal use for which it is associated is not on the same lot. Whereas the applicant also requires bulk variance for a residential zone buffer requirement, which pursuant to the ordinance requires a 50-foot wide buffer along the adjoining residential zone, and because it is a split zone property, the 50-foot buffer is required along the sides of that AF zone, and the required buffer must be landscaped. And whereas the applicant has complied with all the jurisdictional requirements in order to prosecute this application, whereas the matter was subject to a public hearing before the board on July 27, 2022, whereas the applicant was represented by Mark Policastro Esquire, and whereas in support of the application, the applicant provided the following professionals who testified in support of the application: Tung To Lam, professional engineer; Christopher Riley, professional engineer; and Kate Keller, professional planner. And whereas the applicant's professionals provided unrefuted expert testimony in support of the application, and whereas the applicant's professionals testified that the proposed maintenance/shed/garage is to store equipment and other materials for the apartment complex, there will be a maximum of 3 employees on the site at any given time. And whereas the following exhibit was marked into evidence, a 6-page architectural plan with the rendering of the maintenance shed garage, and whereas the applicant also seeks design waivers for a gravel parking lot, buffer, and landscaping abutting the property, all of which are more fully set forth in the July 26, 2022 review memorandum of the township planner and engineer. And whereas the board, after considering all the evidence and testimony presented on behalf of the application, has made the following findings of fact. Number 1, that the applicant is before the board for major preliminary and final site plan approval with a use or D1 variance, bulk or C variance, and design waiver relief. The D1 variance is a de minimis use variance in that it's only before the board because the application is for a maintenance shed or garage as a principal structure that is on its own lot. Had the applicant wanted to build just a maintenance shed or garage on the same lots as the Glenwood apartment complex, it would not be a principal structure or before the board. The applicant seeks to construct a 36,000 square foot maintenance shed/garage on lot 41.11 to serve as a residential development located on block 9,000, lot 22, the Glenwood apartment complex. Number 2, the applicant provided unrefuted testimony in support of the application that the variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and will not impair the zoning plan or zoning ordinance. The board specifically finds that the matter is before the board on a technicality due to the zoning ordinance, and that the granting of the variance and allowing the maintenance shed or garage to be constructed will assist the principal structure, the apartment complex, its business, residents, and staff. The board finds that the property is well suited and situated for the proposed use of the maintenance shed garage. The board finds that granting the bulk number 3, the board finds that the granting of the bulk variance for the buffering pursuant to the ordinance is necessary and appropriate as a result of this unique layout and topography of the subject area. Although the applicant indicated that they would likely comply with the buffering requirements, the board finds it necessary and appropriate to grant the buffer variance, as it will not be a substantial detriment to the public good and will not impair the zone plan or zoning ordinance. Number 4, with regard to the design waivers, the board finds it necessary and appropriate to grant the design waivers for the gravel parking lot, in that the property will not be traversed by anyone other than employees for moving items to and from this maintenance shed. The board finds it necessary and appropriate to grant the design waivers for the landscaping and buffering pursuant to the Township Engineer's July 26, 2022 memorandum. The matter was open to the public, and no member of the public testified with regard to the application. Number 7, the board required as a condition of approval that the applicant agreed that they will comply with all the recommendations set forth in the Township Engineer's July 26, 2022 review memorandum. Additionally, the applicant will add a security gate where the proposed fence will be around the adjusted amenity area in order to ensure that the applicant can keep unwanted parties off the property during weekend hours. The applicant also agreed that as a condition of approval, there would be no storage of any materials outside. And therefore be it resolved that before the Zoning Board of Adjustment for the Township of Old Bridge on this 15th day of September 2022, that the board hereby confirms by this resolution and action taken by the board on the July 27th, 2022, granting the application of Aldercrest Development Corporation for major preliminary and final site plan approval with use variance relief pursuant to NJSA 40:55D-70D1, bulk variance relief pursuant to NJSA 55D-70C, preliminary and final site plan approval and design waivers subject to the following conditions. Number one, that the applicant will comply with all the requirements set forth in the July 26, 2022 review memorandum of the Township Engineer and Planner. Number two, the applicant will erect a security gate where the fence is proposed. Number three, there'll be no storage of any materials outside. Number four, the applicant shall comply with all representations made by or on behalf of the application during the public hearing. And number five, the applicant shall pay all taxes, fees, and required escrows which may be due and owing. Number six, the applicant shall secure any and all other approvals, licenses, and permits required by any other board, agency, or entity having jurisdiction over the subject application or over the subject property. And be it further resolved that the representations, commitments, and agreements made by the applicant or its representatives at the hearing in this matter or contained in any document submitted to the board with regard to this application will be considered as conditions of approval of the application for development and is hereby incorporated in this resolution by reference. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Clancy. Once again, board members, you've heard the resolution. Someone move it for memorialization, please.
Connor, I'll move it.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Was that Chevalier?
Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Ms. Chevalier?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes. You got one more in you?
I do.
Okay, we'll see if the audience does too, okay.
That's the test.
35-2022Z, John Dehart, C variance. Mr. Clancy.
Okay, this is application 35-2022Z. Whereas the applicant, John Dehart, has filed an application to the board for the property known as 15 Bayshore Avenue, Old Bridge, New Jersey, otherwise known as Block 1, Lot 15, on the tax map of Old Bridge. And whereas the applicant has provided the required public notice for the application, and whereas the application was subject to public hearing on July 27th, 2022, whereas the applicants were represented by Robert J. McGowan, Esquire, and whereas in support of the application, Patrick Ward, professional engineer and professional planner, testified in support of the application, whereas the applicant is before the board seeking bulk variance relief pursuant to NJSA 40:55D-70C and seeks the following bulk variance regarding minimum lot area, principal building height, minimum front yard setback, side and rear yard setbacks, utility platform setbacks. Whereas the property is a vacant lot and is in the R5 zoning district, and whereas the property is surrounded by Green Acres, which is a restricted property, as well as county parkland, and whereas the location of the property was significantly damaged by Superstorm Sandy, and as a result is in an AE-13 flood zone, and whereas the applicant's professional testified in support of the application and provided unrefuted expert testimony in support of the application that the property is irregularly shaped and as a result of the surrounding area being Green Acres and county parkland. And whereas the applicant's professionals testified that the board's professionals confirmed that the proposed application is consistent with the other new construction dwellings in the area as a result of the rebuilding following Superstorm Sandy. And whereas the board finds that a hardship exists pursuant to NJSA 40:55D-70C with regard to the condition of the lot and surrounding area, and find that the granting of the variance will not be a detriment to the public good or substantially impair the intent of the master plan and zoning ordinances. And whereas, after considering all the evidence and testimony presented on behalf of the application, the board makes the following findings of fact. Number one, the subject property is an irregularly shaped lot in the area, and is unique in that it is surrounded by Green Acres and county parkland. The applicant's professionals provided unrefuted expert testimony in support of the application, and that the property suffers from hardship as a result of the conditions of the property, and the subject application for a newly constructed home is consistent with new homes and developments in the area. The board finds that the variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and will not be detrimental to the zone plan or the zoning ordinance. Number two, the board finds the granting of the variance relief will further the purposes of zoning and the municipal land use law in providing light, air, and open space, and as a result, the surrounding areas remaining undeveloped, and it is new construction consistent with the requirements after Superstorm Sandy. It is consistent with the newly constructed residential dwellings in the area and is consistent with the neighborhood. Number 3, the matter was open to the public, and no member of the public testified on behalf of the application. Now, whereas the board finds the applicant has met their burden in order to grant C variance relief requested, the board, therefore, be it resolved by the Zoning Board of Adjustment for Township of Old Bridge on this 15th day of September 2022, the board hereby confirms by this resolution the action taken by the board on July 27th, 2022, granting the application of John D. Hart for variance relief pursuant to NJSA 40:55D-70C, subject to the following conditions. Number 1, the applicant shall comply with the recommendations of the township planner and/or the code enforcement officer contained in the report submitted to the board, to the extent that the reports do not conflict with any other conditions contained herein, and shall submit revised plans if necessary in accordance with these reports. Number 2, the applicant shall comply with the representations made on or behalf of the applicant during the public hearings. Number 3, the applicant shall pay all taxes, fees, and required escrow deposits which may be due and owing. Number 4, the applicant shall secure any and all other approvals, licenses, and permits required by the board, agency, or entity having jurisdiction over the subject application or over the subject property. Now, be it further resolved that all representations, commitments, and agreements made by the applicant or its representatives at the hearing in this matter or contained in any document, plat, sketch, or submission delivered to the board at any time prior to this approval, including notes contained in the original or revised submissions, will be considered as conditions of approval in this application for the development and are hereby incorporated in this resolution by reference. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Clancy. Board members, you've heard the resolution, so we'll want to move it for memorialization. I will. Is there a second?
Second, Stoner.
Stoner seconds. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Ms. Chevalier?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes. That was the only one you were interested in, right, Mr. Gown? Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Clancy. You can take a break now.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
We'll move forward in the first application. As I said, we're going to take the C variance first. It's last on your agenda. It's 16-2022Z, Brooke Carson. That's medium-high density residential R6. That's located at block 5000.25, lot 20, 201 Princeton Road for a paver patio. Is Mr. Carson here? Come on up, please, sir. You going to be the only one to testify? You're not sure? Oh, okay. Before you sit down, the board attorney is going to swear you in, sir.
Can you raise your right hand, please? You swear that the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay, thank you.
You can have a seat, sir, in front of the microphone. When homeowners themselves do their own, or they seek variances for small items, normally they're not represented by counsel, or they normally don't have expert witnesses. So we try to make it a little bit more friendly as a member of the community here, but there are certain proofs that you need to put on the record. So what we're going to simply ask you to do is tell us what you did, because we know you did it first without asking permission, and why you did that, how it came out. We may have some questions for you. We're going to go to the professionals. We're going to hear why you're here for a variance, what we have to, so we can make a decision. And then I'll go to a public portion. We'll see what happens there. And then you can call for a vote. If you'd like me to vote, take a vote, I will do so. Okay? So why don't you just simply start and tell us?
We bought the house in 2015. 2016, our contractor basically paved over the patio with concrete, put like a 3-inch platform, and then put pavers on top of that.
And
And
I think you have a setback problem, right? Does it go right to the lot line?
yes, I believe so.
Okay, so you have a setback issue?
Yes.
Okay. Were you aware of the fact that you couldn't do that, or?
No,
You were not. The contractor didn't tell you that?
no.
Don't ever hire him again. Let me ask the professionals why you're here, sir. Ms. Sawan, Township Planner.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, council members. I'm actually covering for Damien, but the zoning officer, I did have a chance to chat with him and go over the application. Originally, this application came in to put a porch in front of the house. And when we were reviewing the survey and looking at the aerials, we noticed that there was a patio that was constructed right up to the lot line, and we started researching more. It definitely violates the ordinance. The ordinance requires a 3 feet setback from the side lot line for any accessory structures. We did discuss removing that patio and moving it off 3 feet, but I understand that there is a raised walkway that leads into the patio on the side, and if there has to be a gate there, they need to create a landing. The landing would still require a variance. So the applicant decided to file an application for the C variance in front of the board. The zoning officer didn't have any particular issues, but when I saw it to the lot line and attending all the meetings, I know Nicole, and Nicole, sorry to put you on the spot, we actually discussed it with the engineering staff during the day. There are drainage issues when you do that, when you have pavers going right up to the lot line. So one recommendation would be, should the board act favorably on this application, this should be subject to an inspection by the engineering office. And the second condition should be that if the engineering office deems it necessary to rectify due to drainage issues, then they should be able to do that. They should be required to do that. So.
Yeah, required. What Mr. Want, in simple terms, is saying that water can't discharge from your property onto someone else's. It has to
Right.
stay on yours. So by you putting it on the lot line, it could go onto your neighbor's lot.
Okay.
I haven't seen your house. Could you tell me, looking at that picture, so the right side of the screen would
Yeah.
be where the pavers were put?
Right.
And that's the right side of your house as you face it from,
Yep.
is there a slope?
The pavers are pitched towards the yard.
They go from right to left.
Yeah, so if you're
Just don't tell me they go from left to right.
They're facing away from my house and neighbors, the adjacent property into the middle of the yard.
Okay, so you can affirm, and you're under oath, you can
Yes.
affirm to the board that is true,
Yes.
and that the water does go?
Yes.
Okay, because you can't discharge water
No,
on somebody else's
no.
property. Okay. Is there anything else from the township?
No.
I'm going to go to the board members and see if they have anything. Ms. Chevalier, anything? Mr. Stoner? No. Mr. Connor? Ms. Andrews? Ms. Testaverde? Okay, this is pretty simple and straightforward. This happens frequently when people don't understand perhaps the ordinances and the need for a permit to do things, or at least inquire. And it keeps you out of trouble that way because you got to spend time here.
Exactly.
We could negate this, but I personally don't think it would be fair to do so to you. But in the future, you have to learn that there are setbacks, and you can read what they are, and they're from your front yard, your backyard, and your side yards.
Of course.
So you can't go up to the lot line. You may own it, but the setback is for a purpose.
Okay.
All right, so you fully understand that?
Yes, sir.
right? Okay, you have any questions for the board?
No.
Because we have none for you. I'm going to go to the public portion, okay, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right. This is matter 16-2022Z, located at 201 Princeton Road. This is a setback issue for favored patio. Does anyone here tonight in the courtroom wish to be heard on this matter? Please raise your hand or stand. I think you're in luck. I'll close the public portion. No one has raised their hands or stand. Let's see what the board thinks. Would you like a vote, sir?
Yes, please.
All right. Once again, board, this is for C variance for setback on the right side. It's on the lot line. It's where it should be 3 foot. Is anyone interested in moving this for approval?
I'll move it for approval.
Ms. Chevalier moves for approval of the C variance. Is there a second?
I'll second Stoner.
Mr. Stoner seconds. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Stoner?
Yes.
Ms. Chevalier?
Yes.
Ms. Andrews?
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde?
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes. We don't have a resolution for you tonight, but we'll have one drawn up. I wish you the best of luck. Welcome to the Township. You've been here a
Thank
few
you.
years now.
Yes.
We like when people improve their homes, and it makes it better for you and makes it a stronger community.
Yep.
Thanks for appearing before us.
Thank you, sir.
Make sure if you need a permit, does he need a permit? Yeah, he will. You will
Okay.
need a permit. Make sure you get that, and you're going to be subject to an inspection.
Yep.
To make sure everything's okay.
All right,
sir?
thank you.
Okay. Thanks for appearing. Okay, we're going to move quickly on. You ready, Deb? Okay. That's the stenographer I was referring to. 83-2022Z, 2G Poor Farm Road LLC. This is located Block 5000, Lot 20, Poor Farm Road. Seeking major and preliminary final subdivision. This is a bifurcated application for a 35-unit residential subdivision. Robert McGowan Esquire is representing the applicant. Mr. McGowan.
Good evening, members of the board.
Push the green. There you go.
There you go. Yes, there you go. Good evening, members of the board. Yes, my name is Bob McGowan. I'm here to represent the applicant. This is our 6th appearance before the board. We had 3 working through the D variances, and this is now our 3rd appearance having to do with the major subdivision. In between our last meeting in July and this meeting, we met again with staff. We met again with Nicole and with Vina. We discussed the issues which seemed most critical at that last meeting. That had to do with traffic, that had to do with parking, that had to do with the COA units. And I think we were able to come to an agreement on that. As you'll hear testimony, we widened Lucy, so that we would be able to add 6 additional parking spaces to that street. That was at the request of engineering, at the request of Nicole. And we're sensitive to the fact that these types of developments, which are closely spaced, really, although the state regulations say that we are more than in compliance. You'll hear testimony that we probably exceed the RSIS requirements by more than 25%. Still, we realize that in these kind of communities, if someone has a party or their holidays and so forth, that you almost can't have enough parking. So we have widened the road. We have added additional parking. We met and we spoke about the COA units, and we have our planner who is, I believe, finally able to testify this evening, Mr. Roberts, and he'll address the issues as to how we have progressed from where we originally started, where we had the COA units all in one building, or a couple of buildings essentially, to now they are, as Vina has strongly advocated for and lobbied for, truly integrated throughout the community. And I think we'll show you that we've satisfied the concerns. One other issue that came up at the last meeting, the gentleman who raised it isn't here this evening, but the question was, where's the school bus going to stop? We have sent a letter to the school board. We have asked for input for that. We have, in fact, they had a agenda meeting on Tuesday night. And we were told today that it is not being addressed by the board, but rather assigned to the business administrator who takes care of such things. He'll be back on Monday, and we'll probably hear from him. So with that said, I'd like to have our engineer come up. He has been sworn in before, and he can give you an update as to a couple of changes that have happened since the last meeting.
Evening.
Just for the benefit of the audience, you can say who you are and
Sure.
your credentials. I know you're under oath and we've already done, but we have an audience here tonight. So.
Kevin Shelley. I am the owner of Shore Point Engineering. I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey. Testified for
Thanks.
various boards.
Yeah, I just want to let them know who you were.
Not a problem. As Mr. McGowan stated, since the last hearing, we had met with the town's professionals, made a couple modifications to the plans based off of the feedback that was provided. One of the major changes was the addition of 6 parallel spaces located on the upper part of the screen on Lucy Drive, adjacent to the stormwater basin. This would provide an additional 6 spaces for on-street guest parking spaces to better serve the community. It brings the total parking provided for the entire development to 146 spaces, whereas 88 are required. So I believe we exceed the RSIS requirements by 65%, well above what is required. But we heard the feedback from the township engineer, the traffic consultant, and we agreed that we could accommodate the request for the additional spaces.
Point out to the board where those are located.
Located at the top of the plan, adjacent to the basin, we have the spaces on this side of the street as opposed to putting the additional spaces closer to the Brewster Circle, which was our main counterpoint at the last hearing. Was we didn't want to impose on that existing vegetative buffer that we were preserving. One of the other changes that Ms. Savant had mentioned was to relocate some of the smaller Thornwood models that are proposed in the community to the front of the site. This way, when you're pulling up on either side of Poor Farm Road, both houses on either side of the street are the same size, the same model. The project looks the same no matter which direction you were coming on. So we had shifted around some of the units on the southern side of the plan here to relocate some of those smaller unit types to the front of the project. And then again, as Mr. McGowan indicated, we had reached out to the Board of Education based off the feedback from the hearing last time. We submitted the letter with the plans and our indication as to providing feedback. And as Mr. McGowan said, we would expect to hear back from the Township Administrator, Business Administrator, sorry, hopefully soon with some feedback.
Kevin, the exhibit that you're referring to is a revised exhibit which shows the widened road and also the rearrangement of some of the units. Can we label that applicant's exhibit A24?
Sure. Just take your pen for a second.
And A24 is the exhibit you were just talking about.
Correct.
Is that correct?
It is dated.
Does the portable mic work, by the way? Yes. It does? Would you bring that over to the table? That way you can both have a microphone. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Good. Thanks.
Got it.
Okay. Anything else, Kev?
No, that's all that I have.
We're going to go to Mr. Proska. Is Mr. Proska on this one?
I am. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members
Evening,
of the board.
sir.
I believe our review letter, the two open items were the sidewalk on both sides of the street, as well as widening Lucy Drive. All the remaining items, I think, either will comply or can easily be addressed by the applicant.
Just the sidewalk.
Correct. Again, with the sidewalk, with the addition of the parallel spaces on the southern end of Lucy Drive, or I guess the western end in comparison, the sidewalk is proposed along that entire internal loop, so anybody who parks on those spaces can get out and walk across the sidewalk to safely navigate the entire site. We are not providing or proposing sidewalk on the opposite side of that street. That sidewalk would, again, further encroach into the buffer between our community and Brewster Circle, which we are trying to preserve. And again, it's our opinion that throughout the crosswalks that we're providing and sidewalks throughout the remainder of the community, that this is a very walkable community for the residents, as well as anybody who is out for a stroll down Poor Farm. There's safe passage around the entire development for the children, wherever a bus stop may be, or for anybody to safely navigate the site.
That's it.
Board members, questions of the witness? To my left? None? To my right? Anybody from the township? Nicole?
So, Mr. Chairman.
Shapiro, the engineer, township engineer.
Okay. The last meeting I wasn't in attendance, but Jonathan Blank from my office had attended. For me and Brian, Mr. Proskar and I couldn't attend that meeting. What we came around when we had reviewed the transcript is we wanted the additional parking on Lucy Drive. We thought it was important because when there's an event that happens at these homes, if there needs to be additional parking, we wanted there to be somewhere for these visitors to go. And there is no parking on Poor Farm Road, and that's why we were pushing it. This week, we had met with the applicant and his engineer, and we expressed that concerns, and we wanted him to push for that parking. I know that Mr. Proska's memo did call for sidewalk on both sides of the street, but then we wanted to preserve that buffer, and we did agree with the applicant that it would be beneficial not to put the additional impervious cover and include the sidewalk on the side closest to the resident. That would only increase that stormwater management facility and make it bigger because now you're introducing more impervious cover. So I want the board to know that the engineering office and by consultation with Mr. Proska, that we find this concept acceptable now in the way that they were reducing the sidewalk to one side of the street and they were also providing parking. I know that there was a mention of the Board of Ed. I remember when we were in the D variance stage before the applicant had bifurcated the application, I went to the Board of Ed and their transportation, and I had asked them if they would come into this cul-de-sac. That's why we were heavily pushing during the bifurcated stage for them to gain access to Poor Farm Road to allow the bus driver to come in, pick up at that intersection of Lucy and Lola, and then turn and come out, or vice versa. So I know that they're going to look favorably on this application and enter the development, not have to pick up the kids on Poor Farm Road. That's what we were worried about earlier in the application, and I think you're going to see that they're going to come back to you with those same results. That was it.
We expect that as well.
Okay. Ms. Sawant, do you have anything?
Nope, I don't.
Okay. Board members, final time for this witness? Well, not final time, but any questions at the moment? No, Mr. Clancy? Go ahead, Mr. McGowan.
With that, I'd like to call Dave Roberts, our planner.
You weren't sworn in.
I don't
Was
know
he?
that he's been
Were you
sworn in because he never had a chance to testify.
That's right. I don't believe he was sworn
Yeah,
in.
not for the only, since, not for the site plan, just for the D variance.
Okay, could you just raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much. State your name one more time.
Sure. It's David Glynn Roberts, DG Roberts, Planning and Design LLC.
Dave, would you, although you've been accepted by the board before, just give a short summary of your experience and credentials?
Sure. My education has been both bachelor's and master's at Rutgers University, bachelor's in environmental planning and then landscape architecture, and then a master's in city and regional planning. I've been practicing for about 41 years. Just a couple of highlights. I've been practicing in both public and private sector. In the public sector, I was in the Sussex County Planning Department, the City of Norwalk, Connecticut Planning Department, and then I was the city planner in Asbury Park for 10 years, and then I did 22 years of private consulting with 2 different firms. I've spent the last 6 years as the township planner and director of planning and zoning in Toms River Township.
Thank you. We certainly accept your credentials and your expertise.
Right, and if you would provide your testimony, David.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if I might, I have, I know that you may be used to this, because I've testified in front of this board a few times, pre-COVID, when I had my hand out. So I have those for you this evening as well. The last time I think I testified on the use variance, we were all virtual, and we did the PowerPoint virtually, but I do have extra copies. And if you just give me a moment, I'll pass them around the dais.
Sure. Just watch the wiring up there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to do is just kind of walk the board through this handout. So you can see the exhibits, almost like a coffee table book. That's the intent. As the board's aware, This was a bifurcated application. The last time I provided testimony on the use variance issues with regard to this, and many of the planning rationale is similar because the site is triangular in shape with its widest part towards Poor Farm Road and the point in the far rear of the property. So it has no rear yard. It has a front yard and two side lot lines that come to a point. You can see that on page 1. And that's really just a key map snip from your township GIS online. You can see the area that's marked site. It doesn't actually show the entire lot because it extends to a point to the north, and the site is predominantly wooded. You can see it a little bit in terms of its proportion with respect to Brewster Court on page 2, which is your existing zoning map to give you a sense of, again, sort of a refresher from last year as to the zoning around the area. It's in an R20 zone, but it abuts the Brewster Court, which is entirely an R9 zone. It's a zoning district that encompasses one development, one community. That community consists of twins. On page 3, I'm sure you are familiar with it, but just kind of gives you a visual for this evening's purposes in terms of these duplexes. These are attached single families. They're on 3,500 square foot lots, so you put them together, they're 7,000 square feet. They're configured differently because the driveways are on the sides of the house. So the driveway is deep enough for at least 2 cars, back to back, and they're identical side by side. I checked some of the descriptions on Zillow for the Brewster Court duplexes. They're about 1,560 square feet, just for purposes of comparison. And then just to give you sort of a walkthrough of how the layouts changed, I think Mr. McGowan made reference to the fact that there's been numerous back and forth with the township professionals. Even when we were going through the use variance process, there was modifications and the plan kept getting tweaked. You'll notice on page 4 was the original layout, and I think Nicole made reference to the fact that the original layout had 2 cul-de-sacs. One of the first concerns that the board had and the professionals had was that there was no second means of egress. So that basically what happened was the Lucy Drive cul-de-sac was extended into a full road out to Poor Farms Road, which then allowed for the school bus to be able to pull through the development. But it also caused us to, as you can see on page 4, there was a twin duplex, 2 units side by side up against that storm basin, and storm basin was along Poor Farms Road. So that building came out in order to extend the road around. So that was probably the first change. Another one of the changes that came out of the review was that that Lola Drive was actually longer, and there were, as you can see, there were actually duplex units at the end of it. So there was an adjustment made there, so there could be room for a playground, sort of recreation space at the end of that cul-de-sac. And then one of the biggest original concerns that the township had and the board had was that the duplex units were market rate. The COA units, and there were more units. There was 42 units originally in the first design. And that generated a requirement for 8 affordables. So the solution for providing the affordables on site was to do what's called a stacked townhouse, where it's kind of like a twin, but there's 1 unit on the ground floor, 1 unit on the second floor, and they were side by side. So there was 4 units there was 2 units per lot, 4 units per building, and they were a completely different configuration than the duplexes. And that's where the township's original concern about the sort of not distinguishing or having the COA units sort of be totally different than the market units, so that would make them stand out. And that's something that your ordinance, your affordable housing ordinance, tries to discourage by requiring them to be integrated. So that we'll get to that a little bit more as we move through this. On page 5, You can see that the revised layout tried to start to address some of those concerns, but you still had the units at the end of Lola Drive. And when you compare that to the proposed site layout that was ultimately approved with 35 units, the difference is you see that there's now the recreation area at the end of Lola Drive with a few parking spaces, but those 8 COA units were still in those 2 separate buildings. What the board determined at the end of that variance process was that they agreed with the particular suitability of the parcel because of its configuration and its constrictions in terms of conventional R20 subdivision layout, but they did not like the differential treatment for the COA unit. So you basically approved the density at 35 units and then left the details to site plan, which is why we're here this evening. The proposed layout has actually changed again, and let's see if I can. Yeah, basically the proposed layout that originally came in, as you heard Mr. Kelly Shelley walk you through the changes, had twins and 1 single-family unit, and that was to get to the 35. You have the 17 twins and 1 single to get to 35. And then I think some of the changes that have really been improvements, in my opinion, Vina's idea of putting the smaller Thornwood units towards the road not only gave the continuity of having them on both sides of the street as you come in, but it also, that's where the storm basin is. So some of the lots now are shorter or not as long in that location because they come up against the storm basin. Having the smaller units on those shorter lots gives more yard space, which I think is also an improvement in the design. And you also heard the description that Mr. Shelley gave about, and Nicole elaborated on with regard to adding more parking, mainly because of the fact that Poor Farms Road there's no parking permitted on that street. So that's kind of brings us to where we are. And on page 7, what I tried to do, now this was the original version, not the latest rendering that you saw tonight, but it's the same number of units and it's the same basic road configuration and effectively the same lot sizes. I tried to show the layout next to Brewster Court. On page 7, this is really by making those images transparent so you can see how they look on the aerial photograph, as well as the single-family development across the street on Poor Farm Road. Those are also smaller lot sizes than the typical R20 permitted lots. And then in terms of the zoning analysis, really to kind of get to the meat of the bulk variances, as you can see, there's the 8 bulk variances that are listed. We're applying lot sizes that were specific to effectively a cluster-type development. Smaller lots, in order to get them to fit, given the triangular configuration of the parcel, in order to get the road network in and out and then have effectively double-loaded lots on each side, that drove the size of the lots. So the goal was to try to come close to, as close to the Brewster Court design as possible. And that's why you notice that the lots, although the Brewster Court lots for each twin is 3,500 square feet, here we have 4,400 square feet, but the R20 obviously requires a 20,000 square foot lot. That's about a half an acre. Those size lots obviously wouldn't work with the parcel configuration that we have. So everything that we have in terms of bulk variances is driven by the use variance, which was acknowledged by the board. So it effectively in this situation, when that happens, the bulk variances like for lot area, lot width, setbacks of the various yards, the landscape ratio, et cetera, are driven by the specific peculiarities of the lot, and those are subsumed into effectively the use variance. So the same rationale that you had for the use variance, you can apply to the bulk variances because the use was considered to be appropriate for the site. So that's really the gist of it. Everything has to do with the configuration of the lot, the width of the lot, and where you can actually fit development towards effectively the fat part of the triangle that fronts on Poor Farms Road. To get to the positive negative criteria that you need for bulk variances, just like you need for use variances, they're effectively parallel. The board did grant the D1 use, the D4, and I'm on page 9, the D4 FAR, which is floor area ratio, and the D5 density deviations. And that's basically because the ultimate 35 unit or 35 lots that were approved by the board for the density are what fits, given the lot sizes that were proposed. The page 9 kind of walks through your cluster goals and objectives, what you would typically look for in a cluster development. Because of the tract area, we don't match them precisely. But for example, it does say to restrict one-to-one type of land use or housing type. Effectively, we have one housing type, which is the duplex twin. We do have one single family because it's an odd number, but we don't have 60 dwelling units. We only have 35. So these cluster goals were intended for bigger parcels. This parcel is 8 acres, and that's kind of how the most we could fit were the 35 that the board approved. And the street system, which is designed to minimize through traffic. Again, the only reason you would be going into this development would be if you lived there or you were visiting someone there. There's no way. The road doesn't lead to anywhere. It just leads back out to Poor Farms Road. Be served by a pedestrian circulation system, which serves the development. Mr. Shelley walked you through that, and you just had some discussion about sidewalks on one side of the street versus two. So there is an internal walkway system within the development. Be designed so that all residential lots adjoin an open space parcel. In this case, because the parcel comes to a point, the open space is the portion in the back that is not wide enough for anything else but open space. So you do have that component to it. And then be designed so that minimum 23% shall be set aside as developed as open space parcels. I don't know if we quite get to that 23%, but we are close. And then the 2 more points of egress. We do now have 2 points of egress. So it is generally consistent with the intent of your cluster ordinances and regulations. In terms of the purposes of zoning, I think I've kind of covered those. The configuration of the parcel is the same particular suitability that we established as part of the use variance. The other components of where the site is located is not only is it adjacent to an R9, although Brewster Court, I observed, was laid out more consistently with an R7 than an R9 because of the lot sizes. The R9 requires a 9,000 square foot lot. The Brewster Court lots are, I believe, around 3,500 square feet each, or around 7,000, so they're closer to the R7 or the R6. But it's also about 1,000 feet linear distance from the entrance road to this development and Route 9. So you're within 1,000 feet of the Route 9 services in the EDO 3 zone, variety of different office employment and retail, and also within a mile of the Old Bridge Park and Ride, and a couple of bus stops on Route 9. So it's close to mass transit, which are all they're also supportive of a higher density type development. And then again, in terms of the effectively the C2 type of argument that you would make for bulk variances, it's similar to the purposes of zoning that you would talk about for special reasons for use variance, in that, and I'm using the same 3, that if the development, if approved, would encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use and development of all lands in the state in a manner which will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. One of the specific examples of how it would do that, besides the fact that it would provide another housing type that is not commonly available in the township now in terms of this twin, other than perhaps Brewster Court, but it shouldn't be forgotten, and I didn't even mention it in this handout. But the 7 affordable units, and the reason it's 7 is because the total number came down to 35. These are unusual affordable units in that they're for sale, and they're non-restricted family for sale units. Those are the most difficult type of affordable units to be able to create, especially in a property that only has 35 units to begin with, to subsidize the affordables. So in terms of having that, adding that to the township's inventory of affordable units, where the majority, and I can speak more, I'm more intimately familiar with Tom's River's situation because we have an obligation of 1,285 credits to try to meet by 2025, which is one of the highest in the state. I would say the only deed restricted owner for sale units that we have were built in the 90s, and they were all condos, 1 and 2 bedroom condos, and quite small. Those were inclusionary developments for the most case. Everything else that we've had built in the last 10 years have all been either 100% affordable with low-income tax credit apartments or rental apartments. And part of the reason for that is that in the COA regs, there's I believe, in my opinion, almost a built-in bias against for sale units because from the township's point of view, up to 25% of your total obligation, you get a bonus credit for the rentals. So you effectively get 2 credits for every rental, and you only get 1 credit for every for sale unit, and you can't get bonuses for sale units. So it makes it, not only are they more expensive and more difficult to build integrated into a inclusionary development because you're effectively having to subsidize them. In most cases, the cost to build them when you integrate it with the site acquisition and all the other site costs, you're effectively losing money. So you have to subsidize them with what you sell the other units for. And you've only got 35 units to do that with, and if you subtract the 7, it's really the 27 units that have to support the 35, the other 7. My math was probably wrong, but you get the point. So basically, the purposes of zoning, I believe that is a major benefit for the township that can be considered under Purpose A. Same thing with Purpose G, because this talks about a variety of uses, and this would be a unique use for the township. And then the promoting the visual environment through creative development techniques. In this particular case, effectively the area was divided, or it was designed to fit the site. So it was effectively a custom design for this site. The layout, the unit types, and then I know that Mr. Vincenti went into great detail on the 2 unit types at the last meeting, the Thornwood and the Northshire. The Thornwood at 1,922 square feet, and the Northshire at, I believe it's 2,679 square feet. So quite generous size units. And I think I mentioned as a basis of comparison that the Brewster Court twins are 1,560 square feet. So you have the smallest units at 400 square feet larger than what are basically 2 and 3 bedroom units next door. I think the other thing that's noteworthy is that generally speaking, and I did a little checking in Old Bridge right now, some of the new townhouse developments that are coming online with the 3-bedroom 2 baths or 3-bedroom 3 baths are ranging anywhere from the slightly under the mid 6s to the upper 6s in terms of sales prices. So those are townhouses. These are duplexes. So the owners will have a little more property around them. They'll have the open space in the back. So you can expect that it's probably comparable in terms of the market units being somewhere in that range, especially at those sizes. The townhouses that I saw were almost identical in size to the smaller Thornwood. I believe the 2 that I looked at, they were both around 1,912 square feet. These are 1,922 square feet. So you can, and I might understand from talking to Mr. Vincenti, they believe the average sales prices of the affordable units in this development would be more like $240,000. So you can imagine that is a significant difference, and those units I'm sure will be significantly sought after. And then the only other thing I would mention is that it shouldn't be forgotten that one of those 7 units is required to be a very low income unit. So it's technically 13% of your affordable housing obligation since 2008 is required to be affordable to a very low-income household. And I think looking at the 2022 income ranges for the 4.5-person household, that income is only around, if I remember correctly, it's in the 40s, like $42,000 a year. For a multi-bedroom house, that's the income level that's going to be living in one of these units. So that's going to be a very lucky family that gets that unit. And I think based on that, I think that when you think about where we started with the two stacked townhouses, putting all the affordables in two buildings that were completely different from the other units, and not only were they different in terms of their size and appearance, they didn't have garages. Those residents would be parking in parking spaces. Now you've progressed to the point where you've got, even though the affordables would all be in the Thornwoods, and there would be market and affordable Thornwoods, so they'll be integrated in that regard. The Thornwoods will be indistinguishable from the street in terms of which ones are COA units or affordable units and which ones are market. But because of the generous size of the Thornwoods, I believe that the developer has done everything possible and has, I think, tried to meet the spirit of the integration requirement of the township, and I think this is going to be a very unique development in terms of, I don't have any examples of anything like this in Toms River. In fact, in many cases, I can give you one example, much bigger project, 250-unit townhouse development. They were not able to provide any townhouses that were affordable. They ended up solving that by subdividing off a parcel, getting low-income tax credits, and putting their 50-unit, 20% affordable in two apartment buildings, one with 24 units and one with 25 units or whatever. So the 50 units, I think it's 26 and 24. So they were actually in a completely different adjacent development. They weren't even part of the townhouse development. The townhouse development were all market. So again, that was with 250 units. This is 35. So I really think the township is doing a great job of trying to work out a way to do this. And I think it's turned into a much better result as a result of all the back and forth that the applicants had with your staff and comments that they've received from the board over the last 2 years.
What do you see as the typical size of the largest COA units that generally exist?
It's hard to say because I checked just to see if there was something to compare it to. They don't regulate minimum. It used to be that there was many ordinances had minimum unit sizes. That was actually one of the things that was exclusionary in the Mount Laurel ordinance that was used to keep people out, basically. Those ordinances, for the most part, have been eliminated. So there is no real minimum unit size, and then there's no maximum unit size. I think the key thing that of all the more recent projects is that you try to balance them out so that typically you're not getting any difference between the size of the COA units and the size of the market units for the same unit. And then the other thing is that most of in terms of the unit sizes that we see in apartment complexes, it's a lot easier actually, to integrate and 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom apartments in an apartment building and integrate the COA and the market units than it is for sale units when you don't have, especially you see very few 1-bedroom for sale units unless there are condominiums in an apartment multifamily building. So that's where it gets where it gets tricky to try to achieve those goals. But I wasn't able to find any unit sizes in the UHAC regs or any. I looked at both Toms River and Old Bridge's affordable housing ordinances to see if there was anything in there. We don't regulate unit sizes, so there's really no basis to compare. But I would say even in terms of just comparing these units to other units that are in other developments in Old Bridge, I think probably the best comparison are the townhouses that I saw that were 1,912 square feet that were for sale in the sixes. So I think
those are COA units.
Those are not COAs, those are market units, right. And these COA units will be bigger than the market units in those townhouse developments. So I mean, for all those reasons, just to conclude, I would say that, you have the same reasons to approve these bulk variances as you did to approve the use density and FAR variances when you found that the site was particularly suited for this particular development.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Mr. Watt.
I don't have any questions for Mr. Roberts. I think Mr. Roberts has very eloquently described the numerous weeks of working with the applicant and improvising from. It's been a huge change from where we began like 2 years back almost, right? 2 years back. So I think most of my concerns have been addressed. The only thing I want to raise is there was an additional variance which we discussed at the last meeting, and it was for lot coverage, because right now these homes will be built at 45%, which means that there will be no room to put a deck or a patio. So I had recommended that looking at the lot sizes, we should grant a variance for 55% lot coverage so that the homeowners would be able to put in a deck or a patio. So that was an additional variance. The other thing I had mentioned was the encroachments into easements, because there are private easements, and we just want to make sure that no encroachments will be allowed in any private easement unless we have a letter of approval from the easement holder, and the zoning office will also require a hold harmless letter. And I think two things I would like to work with. We already have been working on the architecturals, but I do want to have a discussion before we finalize the color scheme and stuff like that. Landscaping, I know the applicant has agreed to work with us to fine-tune the landscaping, and that's pretty much it.
Thank you very much.
It concurs with all those comments.
Okay.
So a note to Brian, actually, when we write the resolution, typically we take the variance table and the waiver table from my memo, but there is a new variance that needs to be added.
So it's going to require a C for the lot coverage. Is there a, for the encroachment, is that also, is that a
No.
waiver or is that just a letter?
It's just a letter. It's just a note to them so that when they come in with the sales map, they can have that language in there.
And Mr. McGowan, the applicants agreed?
Yes,
And
we
the
have.
hold
And
harmless
we
letter
do
to-
request that we have a 55% lot coverage. instead of 40.
And the hold harmless letter to the township as well?
Yes, we agree.
Lasky, do you have anything?
No.
Board members, I'll start on my left. You have another witness, sir?
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman, I just want to make sure that if we're doing 55% lot coverage, that the basin would be designed to accommodate 55% of each of those lots.
I believe the applicant agreed to that
Right,
list.
we had discussed that in the pre-hearing before this meeting, and yes, we understand that needs to be done.
I almost forgot Fire Marshal. Thank you very much. Okay. Nothing else?
That's all we have. Thank you.
Before I go to the public, I'm just going to ask the board one more time, is there any issues that you want to talk to, bring up to, that Mr. Shelley or Mr. Roberts has testified to tonight, that we need clarification?
I'm just curious. Didn't Mr. Vincenti testify last time too?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, my question is, last time you said that for cost efficiency, or this whole cluster development might be downsized for cost effectiveness to the builder. Is that, you did? It's a-
Hold on.
I can address that, or John can address it, but what John was addressing was we were still having a discussion as to the integration of COA units with market units, and Vina was still advocating at that point, from her understanding of fair share housing's requirements in COA, that there should be some of the 2,500 unit square foot units should also be affordable. And in our meetings and so forth, and as you heard, Mr. Roberts testified tonight, that just isn't economically possible. If that were to be forced upon us, you'd only end up with smaller units, and that wouldn't make the project necessarily feasible. So in order to provide the affordable housing, we need to limit it to the 1,900 square foot units and integrate it as we have proposed.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Sure. Thank you.
Anybody else on the board to my left for either witness this evening? And Mr. Vicenti's here too for any questions, and he, of course, is still under oath. He's been sworn. Anybody on this side? No? Okay. I want to go to the public then, Mr. McGowan?
Yes, please.
All right. This is matter 83-2020Z, 2G Poor Farm Road for 35-unit residential subdivision. Anybody here in the audience this evening have comments or questions or want to make any statements to the board? This would be the time to do so by either raising your hand or standing. I see none. I'll close the public portion.
Thank you, Mr.
Final
Chairman.
comments, Mr. McGowan?
No final comments. I appreciate the board's attention and patience throughout this process.
Mr. Clancy, we have in front of us a major and preliminary and final subdivision, correct? And plus, if that, plus a C variance
Yes, for the lot coverage.
for the lot coverage.
For the impervious coverage, moving it to 55%.
All right, would we do the C first and then the final, or?
Well, we also have the C bulk variances, which is what he testified, but they're assumed from our position into the previous approvals.
They are by the approval of the D variance.
Correct.
Okay, so we don't need to re-vote on that. But we would have to vote on the lot coverage.
Yes, yeah, that's a new one.
And then we would vote on the final and the.
Okay.
I believe we need to vote on the Cs.
Yes?
Yeah, we always do.
It's
it's assumed.
For functionary, but I think you do need to include it in the resolution.
It is
Yes.
assumed, but it has been the board's practice that we do vote on the Cs again.
Okay. Those were all I think they're on. Did you have them listed, Mr. Roberts, or no? Yes, I think they are. Yeah, they're on page 8. No, they're not. They're on page. You don't have them in this brochure, I don't think. I just want to make sure we have cover them all. I don't have any documentation in front of me. Ms. Swan, if you have them, would you just read them in? Where is it?
You need
Bottom
the
of what?
list of the variances, right?
I'm sorry. It is 1 on page 8 of his submission.
Okay.
Bottom of page 8, it looks like.
Okay, yeah, they're at the bottom of that chart on the right-hand side.
Right, they're numbered 1 through 8.
Okay, I'll read them into the records. Variance requested for minimum lot area, variance requested for minimum lot width, variance requested for minimal front yard setback, variance requested for minimum side yard setback on one side, variance requested for minimum total side yard setback, variance requested for minimum rear yard setback, variance requested for minimum landscape ratio, and variance requested for minimum buffer. And then, of course, we have to do the lot coverage.
Yes, for 55% instead of 45.
I believe there are 2 variances related to the buffer. Buffer to the residences, section 250-54D1, and driveway within the required buffer, which is section 250-54A.
Agreed, Mr. McGowan?
I would concur.
I think what we should do is all the variances included in on page 5 of the memo dated July 19, 2022.
Authored by yourself?
Yes, with an addition of the lot coverage area variance.
Okay,
Thank you.
on Mr. Want's memo, page 5, table 3, variances. Do you have that, Mr. McGowan?
Yes, I do. I'm looking at it now. Yes.
All right. Would we agree that that would be the bulk variances?
Yes.
And
thank you, Vina.
we're going to add lot coverage. That was not in here, correct?
That is correct.
Board members, questions? Do you understand that? All, and we'll vote them as a block, right? Someone in favor of moving the C variances?
Connor, I'll move it.
Is there a second? I'll second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Ms. Chevalier, Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Then we would go to major preliminary and then final, or just major preliminary, right?
Major preliminary should be next.
Correct. So it's major preliminary site plan, major preliminary, then we'll vote on final site plan. As to major,
Connor, I'll move it.
is there a second?
Second Stoner.
Second Stoner, roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Ms. Chevalier, Mr. Scogno, oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. And finally, final site plan. Someone want to move that?
I'll move it, Stoner.
Stoner moves it. Is there a second?
Connor, I'll second.
Connor seconds. Roll call, please.
Mr. Connor,
Yes.
Mr. Stoner,
Yes.
Ms. Chevalier, Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
Ms. Testaverde,
Yes.
Chairman Sullivan.
Yes. Mr. McGowan, thank you and your professionals for appearance tonight in the
Members of the
testimony.
board, thank you. Nicole, Vina, thank you very much.
Best of luck. in
Tom,
your-
thank you.
We're going to take a quick break because the stenographer has to change out, so we stand in recess for no more than 5 minutes. I'd like to get back at 9:05 on that clock up there. If anybody from the board needs to step off the dais, please be back promptly. All right, we're going to come back from recess. We're coming back from recess. We're going to deal with this next matter. Before I do, I just want to announce to the public and those maybe watching, matter number 06-2022Z, Reliance Auto Adult Daycare at 18 Marlborough Road, has been adjourned for the evening. Applicants requesting an adjournment and the public hearing scheduled to continue on October 6th, 2022. There'll be no further notice on that if you're watching at home, or if you're here for that this evening, it's not going to be heard. It will be on the agenda October 6th. With that, we'll move forward to our final agenda of the evening. The final application is 52-
Chairman, should we take roll call?
Yeah, why don't you do that?
Chairman Sullivan?
Yes, here.
Mr. Connor?
Here.
Mr. Stoner?
Present.
Ms. Chevalier?
Here.
Ms. Andrews?
Here.
Ms. Testaverde?
Here.
Mr. Clancy? Here. Ms. Sawant?
Here.
Mr. Dargy?
Present.
Mr. Hart? Here. And myself, Ms. C. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. C. This is 52-2021Z RD Management Corp., located block 16004, lot 53, frontage on Route 18 in Foxborough Drive. Seeking major and preliminary and final site plan with C&D variances, represented by Kenneth Pape, Esquire. Mr. Pape.
Mr. Chairman, board members, public,
There you go.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, board members, board professionals, and public, good evening. My name is Kenneth Pape. I'm an attorney with the firm of Heilbrunn Pape, and it is my responsibility and my privilege this evening to represent your applicant, RD Management Corp. F. This is an application requesting use variance and preliminary and final major site plan approval for 120 apartments to be constructed on property that has frontage on Foxborough Drive and Route 18. The lot and block designation is block 1604, lot 53. Before we begin, I would ask if your attorney or secretary could confirm receipt of our notices and establish that jurisdiction has been made.
Yes.
Thank you. Before we go into the substance of tonight's presentation, I think that it should be noted that our client made an application some 3 years ago to the planning board for the development of this property without use variances. The development was for a shopping center, gas station, and a convenience store, all of which were expressly permitted uses. That application was presented to the planning board. The planning board did not accept that application. The applicant and the planning board are in court and have been for about 2 years. If this matter, if we earn a use variance from this board, that application will be withdrawn. The complaint in the Superior Court will be dismissed. I do not want anyone to think that we're trying to have two approvals on the property, and we're not forum shopping. We are here to earn a use variance for the relief that is part of the application.
Confer with our attorney? Is this? Okay. Yeah, obviously, for those who are sitting here, and Mr. Pape, obviously, you know the question I was asking you, or do we have jurisdiction to hear this while the matter is in the Superior Court? And this is a separate application from the previous one. Mr. Clancy would just like you to give some more explanation as to maybe a little bit more history and.
Surely.
board,
Any
for the
specific
board's edification
questions?
here, this went before the planning board, not the zoning board.
This one belongs here.
No, that, I understand that. I said the one that you're in Superior Court is as a result of a planning board denial, I believe.
It was a planning board denial, that's correct. It was an application for retail uses that were expressly permitted. The planning board had jurisdiction. The application there was considerable objection to that application, and the planning board denied the relief that was requested. An appeal, a prerogative writ was filed. The prerogative writ has been in front of, I just forgot his name. It's been in the Superior Court in New Brunswick for the past 2 years. Judge McCluskey is fully aware of the fact that we have asked that those matters be stayed briefly as we progress with this application before the zoning board.
The court's aware of the fact that you made a separate application to the zoning board for another.
Court has been informed, yes.
Okay.
Planning board attorney has been informed, yes.
Okay. Satisfied? I'm satisfied.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm satisfied this is a completely separate application, it's before a different board, and that we can have jurisdiction over this.
Thank you, Mr. Clancy. Thank you, Mr.
Chairman and counsel, I appreciate the opportunity for that to be made clear on the record.
Thank you, sir.
The presentation is to be made by 5 separate professionals, each in their own discipline. Michael Pucci, who is seated alongside of me, is a professional engineer. He is responsible for the design of the plans that will be presented to you. And he is our first witness. His responsibilities are to introduce the property to you and then to go through the site plan elements of the application. He'll share with you that we have met with your professionals. Your professionals provided us with a very comprehensive 17-page memo in mid-August and were generous with their time, so we've had an opportunity to meet with them and work with them on that report. After Mr. Pucci testifies, Jason Tronco is both a planner and a landscape architect. He will present the landscape plan. We believe the landscape plan to be a very significant part of the project because we have a residential community that exists behind us, and preserving the wooded areas behind us and enhancing them is a priority, and his responsibility will be to present that portion of the plan. The third witness is Jack Raker. Mr. Raker is an architect. He is with Minnow and Wasco. His firm has designed the building, the 120 apartment building. It's a single one building on the site. He will present it to you as well as some of its architectural features and amenities. And Mr. Chair, I think starting at 9:17 and agreeing that we conclude at 10:30, and no one wants to rush. We want to be thorough in our presentation. I think those are the 3 witnesses, hopefully, that we'll reach. The 2 witnesses that will follow are John Ray, the traffic engineer, whose testimony will be at the subsequent hearing, and Allison Coffin, our professional planner, who is the one who brings it all to a conclusion at the end of the presentation. With that, if I may, and I also wanted to indicate that William Miller, Esquire, is here. Mr. Miller has historically represented the association. He and I have been in communication. He'll speak for himself, and his members will speak for himself, but he did authorize me to indicate that his board is philosophically aligned with this request for residential apartments as opposed to the retail project. I had the permission to make that statement. All other statements will be from Mr. Miller to the board personally. Do you want Mr. Miller to enter his appearance?
When he comes up,
Very good.
there's no need.
Very good, thank you. Then with that, Mr. Chair, Michael Pucci, professional engineer who is seated alongside of me, if we could have him sworn, will share his credentials and go into his substance.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to provide before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Can you just state your full name, please?
Michael Pucci, P-U-C-C-I.
Are you
Thank you,
on?
sir. You can see.
Doesn't seem like you're on. Yeah, okay. Mr. Pucci, if you would share with us your professional and educational background.
I graduated at Rutgers some
I don't think
40
that's working. There's a button on the side, I believe.
It should be working.
You got it.
Okay.
I think it's very directional.
I am a professional engineer, educated at Rutgers some 43 or so years ago. I've been employed by CPL Partnership, formerly Chester Partnership, and a number of other names over the years for 43 years and some odd months. And I am now the, senior member of the firm, have represented both private and some limited public development throughout the entire state through many planning boards, zoning boards. I've been qualified before Superior Court. I've appeared before this zoning board.
Thank you,
and this
Mr.
planning
Pucci. I
board.
wanted the people in the audience and those at home to know who was going to be testifying. The board certainly accepts your expertise, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask that, Mr. Pucci, if you could begin by identifying the exhibits that you intend to rely upon. If you call them out, perhaps Natalie will be able to put them up one at a time.
I've spoken with Natalie, and A1 is what I will call the first exhibit. It is a site location aerial. Now, old school, I have a board here to look at, as well as you have the video file to look above you. This just is an orientation of where the site is in the township.
Let's mark all of your exhibits and then return to A1 for presentation.
A2 is site layout in aerial. The same picture, but now a picture of the site plan plopped in the blank lot where it will be proposed. A3 is called a preliminary and final site plan. This is actually a colored version of what you all have before you in a black and white plan that was submitted to you with one minor addition, which I will describe when I get to it. And if the board is so inclined to ask questions, I have three more exhibits. They are truck turning movement plans to establish the various vehicle movements throughout the project site. I will use what is known as truck turning plan WB50 as A4. Truck turning plan -SU will be A5. And lastly, truck turning plan -fire truck will be A6.
I didn't hear which one.
Fire truck.
If you are ready, I think we'll go to A1. Spend a little bit of time orienting everyone in the room to the site. Talk a little bit about its current natural condition. In your direct, if you could identify the size of the property, the road frontages, the surrounding uses, and the zone.
Okay, so the property is known as Block 16004, Lot 53. It is about 9 and change acres, located, as Mr. Pape previously described, along Route 18 northbound at the southern end of the Foxborough Drive intersection here. Property is about 410 or so feet deep, that is in the generally east or west direction, and approximately 1,000 feet long, of which 700 feet of it is actual tangent frontage on Route 18. There is a bit of a curve along the existing Foxborough Drive jug handle exit ramp from northbound 18, and a sort of a triangular point to the southern end. So the 1,000 feet is up into the middle of the point here. As I said, give or take 9 or so acres. Right now, given the location of 18 and Foxborough Drive, you've heard the discussion of Foxborough, the representation of Mr. Miller, who represents the Foxborough Homeowners Association. The Foxborough development is immediately to our east. You can see all the homes both on this plan and up on the screen. Right behind us is Stone Ridge Road. If you enter off of 18, either northbound or through the jug handle from southbound onto Foxborough Drive, you're going to tee off into Stone Ridge Road. Make a right and you'll hit the loop road of Ponderosa. Go to the left, you'll eventually hit Mariposa. To the opposite side of Foxborough, you have Marlborough Road feeding into the extension of Spring Valley Road and Walmart. A little bit to our north, Ferry Road and the hospital. Right now, you can see on this picture, the site it's green. It has been cleared. There's been 2 separate approvals for tree clearing over the years. There previously was an application approved on this site back in the late 70s or early 80s. And there had been some work done on the site way long time ago, but you can see it's green now because some vegetation has reestablished itself. The existing remainder, besides Foxborough to our right, you see right here to the south, there is one building, a school, and then open land to the north and west. And as I said, behind the open land to our west on the opposite side on 18 southbound, you have Walmart. Moving on to A2, this is the same exact background, but now instead of showing you the open land, I've plopped in electronically our proposed site plan. And the site plan here generally shows that we are proposing one building, as Mr. Pape described, one building of 120 units. That building will be surrounded by a parking area. The parking area is up against all the building as well as up against the green area on the outside of that building. The entire footprint of development construction is ringed by green. There will be two access points, a right-in, right-out maneuver on Route 18 located towards the very southern end of our development footprint, and a driveway connection out to Foxborough Drive that you see this little hook to the north to get this exit movement as far away from Route 18 as possible. When I bring up A3, which is an enlarged version of this, I'll show you for why that is moved to the right. But this is just to orient you where the actual development proposal fits on the lot. As you can see out here, the change in tone from the trees and aerial photography of the surrounding existing area to these green in here, that's just showing where our footprint is. Now, I show trees on the backside and this point here based upon just putting greenery where we will have existing vegetation to remain. As Mr. Pape stated, there will be a landscape architect to follow me. He will show you in a much better and prettier picture a true representation of what is there today and what will be enhanced with all of the additional new plantings we will place, as well as the infill plantings that will be placed to supplement the existing vegetation and provide an enhanced buffer from our development footprint to the surrounding community.
And I think that this might be a very good opportunity to point out that there are a couple of things that we were asked by Mr. Miller to consider, and one of them was that the driveway on Foxborough, which is shown as a simple driveway without restriction, and we were asked if we would restrict that driveway so that there were no right turn movements. That anyone coming out of that driveway would, through geometry and signage, not be permitted to make a right turn into the Foxborough community. It creates no issue for your applicant. It creates no safety issue. So we will agree to address that concern. We will agree to have a restriction on right turn movements into the Foxborough community. Okay. I think that's a good executive overview of your plan.
And just an overview of the plan and where it fits.
Yeah. If we could go to your third exhibit, and let's go through the elements of the site plan in detail.
So this is a much larger version of what you just saw squashed into the overall aerial photograph. This is, as I said, a colored version of the preliminary and final site plan that was filed with you. And I did say that there is a minor adjustment to that plan. So covering that one adjustment right now, when I prepared this site plan, I had hidden the location of the signs. And when I say hidden, it's just an electronic term for they were not plotted. They're just in the file, but they weren't shown. So I have turned those back on and moved them into an appropriate location at the suggestion of your professionals. When we met with them earlier in the week, there was a question that was raised, and it was in their review letter. What about project identification signage? So this map is what you have seen, but I have added to this map a sign at the entrance driveway, just to the north of the entrance driveway, but at least 10 feet behind the property line. So it is compliant with a setback from the property line. It is not compliant with parking issues, but it is located in this location for visibility and to conform to your setback requirement from your property line. Similarly, there's another project sign over here on Foxborough Drive, again, fully compliant with your setback issues to driveway and to property line. However, this, again, was not shown on the plan that you have in front of you in black and white that was filed. So that's the one difference between what you have now and what's here, other than we put color on it to enhance it.
And the details of that signage will be presented by Mr. Trunco when he presents the landscape plans?
That is correct. The signage is actually under his jurisdiction. It's a landscaped element, if you will. And when I unfortunately provided him that file, this sign was located a little bit too close to Route 18. It violated a setback. So this plan here is what you should look at for the purposes of location. Mr. Tronco's plan will show you the details of it, but it will be in a compliant location with respect to the setback to 18.
Just the architect will testify to, but I think it's be important for all to know, of the 120 apartments, there are 15% that are affordable. This is an application that is inherently beneficial. 15% of 120 is 18. Affordable units must comply with the UHAC requirements, the distribution of 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. We will present to you the total of 120 units. There are 51 bedrooms, 52 2-bedrooms, and 3 3-bedrooms. The 3 3-bedrooms are UHAC compliant. That is why they're there. I'm going to ask if you could just identify, before we go into your direct presentation, count of parking stalls that are on the site.
There are 231 parking stalls provided on the site. So we are completely RSIS compliant. We also have provided ample handicap parking and scattered it in appropriate locations. We have agreed with your professionals to adjust that location and fully document. I mean, the plan is fully compliant with all accessible route criteria, but we want to make it absolutely clear that the exact routes and the grades and slopes, et cetera, to make sure that everyone can check and verify compliance. So 231 are provided in excess of what's required.
So let's go through site plan elements. Grading. If you could just describe the existing grading conditions of the property and what would be done to the site in order to accommodate this development plan.
Okay. Assuming there may not be familiarity with topographic maps, there are a bunch of squiggly lines in here that are kind of close to one another. That represents a slope where it's a little bit higher as you get closer to the highway and it drops off a little bit here. And they're only close in this area here. The rest of the site, they're generally a little further apart. The further apart they are, it's just an indication it's a relatively gentle slope. So much of the site is a relatively gentle slope with a little bit of a fall off to a slighter depression area here. Everything does drain to the south. This area in here where these circled lines have little ticks on them, this is actually a detention basin. As I mentioned 10 minutes ago, this site received approvals in the late 70s, early 80s for an office development, actually, an office tower. And as part of that development approval, infrastructure was placed. There are pipes on the site today underneath the ground for sanitary. There's a stub for water. There are some storm pipes, and there is an existing detention basin with a gabion block wall at the southern end on the site today. So that's the low area where everything kind of goes today. It was just graded that way, and that's where the water runs to. There's actually a control structure and a pipe that takes it out into the storm sewer system in Ponderosa. Generally, what we propose to do is place a very flat, that is one constant elevation building across here, where there's a little bit of cut of soil in the lower left corner and a little bit of fill of soil in the lower right. That's just because the property goes downhill and this sort of cuts into the middle. So it's a very minor adjustment to the existing grades. It's a gentle slope basically across the property today, and we're going to place this building in the middle somewhat a little bit on a pedestal so that everything falls away from the building. That is, all the parking just drains away from the building. The grass area drains away towards the perimeter.
And in that grading plan, that's part of your site plan, will you continue to direct the water in the same direction that it is currently traveling off-site?
Absolutely. As Mr. Dargy will undoubtedly make sure I do, there are state and municipal regulations concerning stormwater and making sure that you don't exacerbate any existing flooding condition, to make sure that you actually follow some new standards that were adopted a little over a year ago for cleaning up water. So what happens now, you can see at the edge, outside of it, of all the parking, there's a sort of a dark olive color. That represents a little bit of a stone area. And then these darker green areas around the entire perimeter, they are what are known as bioretention or biofiltration swales. So all the stormwater gets cleaned in these biofiltration swales, and they all connect down to this detention basin at the lower end of the site. The detention basin's there.
If I may, so the grading, you'll regrade the site as you've described, but that regrading will not result in the change of direction of the stormwater flow.
That is correct. Everything will still go to the same place it goes today.
So I think that following grading is to go into a description of the drainage system. And I'm going to ask that you not try to teach us how to be engineers, but take us through the drainage system elements, and then I'm going to ask you some very important questions about the design and whether it complies with appropriate laws.
As I just acted as a Dilbert and went into detail, basically we have three requirements to address for stormwater: quantity, quality, and recharge. Quality being the first one that I will address is what I just described. Everything's going to get treated in these biofiltration swales. They are natural green infrastructure, in the vernacular of DEP, ways to clean up water from dirty surfaces, pavement. That treatment will occur in these swales, and the swales are provided with underdrains to collect the water after it's treated through the vegetation in the soil and bring it to the detention basin. Quantity is handled by the detention basin as well as those biofiltration swales. They provide some attenuation in flow, and then the detention basin, which is there today and will just be modified to accommodate the development scheme, will reduce the flow of water off of the site so it doesn't exacerbate anything. In fact, there are requirements for us to reduce it, cut it down by what it happens today. The third element is recharge, and part of our stormwater management report that has been submitted to and reviewed by Mr. Dargy is that the existing soils on the site are very impermeable. We've done extensive soil testing, and therefore we do not have the ability to recharge because the soil doesn't recharge today and it won't recharge in the future. Indeed, in addition to the stormwater management report, we filed an aquifer recharge assessment report, which was also reviewed by Mr. Dargy's office.
That stormwater that you're collecting, cleaning, what is the ultimate discharge point of all that stormwater?
The existing basin today has an existing outlet structure. It's this little, I'll call it tannish gray structure, this box right here. That today collects all the water from the site in the existing basin, and it is piped through existing piping and easements out to the storm sewer system in Ponderosa Lane. That is exactly where it will go in the future. All we are doing to this outlet structure is putting a restrictor plate on the outflow structure to shrink the hole that the water can get through a little bit to sort of hold it back a little more and provide enhanced attenuation of the runoff.
So there are regulations that you must comply with. In 2021, the DEP passed a brand-new set of stormwater regulations, and this project is a new project that must comply with those regulations. Would you confirm on the record that you have designed the stormwater system to be consistent with the 2021 NJDEP regulations?
Yes.
There's also a set of regulations on stormwater management that are embodied in the ordinances of Old Bridge. Similar but not identical. If you could confirm that you've designed this to be consistent with the ordinances of the Township of Old Bridge.
Yes.
As part of the new state regulations, every stormwater basin must have an operations and maintenance manual prepared by the designer, reviewed by the municipality, and recorded as a lien against the property in perpetuity. Did you prepare an operations and maintenance manual?
Yes, we did.
And that has been submitted to Mr. Dargy and the township for review?
That's correct.
And I'd ask if you could confirm that this drainage, this elaborate drainage system that you have just described, if you could confirm that this places no burden on the township of Old Bridge, that all aspects of the construction and long-term maintenance are private responsibilities of the property owner. And those responsibilities travel with whoever owns the property as a result of the recorded operations and maintenance manual.
That is absolutely correct.
Maybe we can go to lighting and landscaping briefly.
Okay. As I had mentioned before, Mr. Tronco is the landscape architect who has prepared the landscaping and lighting plans. What I represented here, where I show just this light green tone, is not what you're going to see. He has a much better exhibit, much prettier, showing that there is a professional landscape architecture firm having designed a specific landscape proposal for this property. That firm, Lilla Bauer Carmen, has also prepared the lighting plan for the property. So I can tell you that the lighting conforms to the ordinance requirements for foot candle distribution, and the landscaping conforms, from my perspective, to the spacing and species requirements. But Mr. Tronco will elaborate much better than I on the actual plan that he authored.
Circulation. If you could, I think going through your circulation plans one at a time has a value. It'll be available to Mr. Ray when he testifies, but I'd like you to establish for the board and the public that the anticipated vehicles, be it trash vehicles, emergency vehicles, and school bus vehicles, all these vehicles can be accommodated on the site. If you could take us through that with your exhibits.
I will start with what I called A4, and it just happened to be random which one I picked up. This one is the WB50. This is your tractor trailer. And this shows that a tractor trailer from Route 18 inbound, northbound, taking a right on our entrance driveway, can obviously enter the site and make the left turn and to go across the front of the building. And then this particular exhibit up in the corner shows that it can then make the turn to the right. In this upper right corner, it can then come back out and exit onto Route 18. Similarly, the truck can come in and do the reverse move. So a tractor trailer can certainly use the Route 18 in and out and circle the building in either direction. We've also shown that a tractor trailer from southbound 18, presumably crossing through the jug handle and then heading eastward on Foxborough Drive, can actually maneuver into the site. Now, what we've shown is that a tractor trailer exiting the site cannot make it. There's a blow up down here that shows that any tractor trailer that tries to make the right-hand turn, which, by the way, as Mr. Pape elaborated before, there will be appropriate signage telling them that they're not allowed to do that. But physically, that truck will wind up over the median considerably with the cab on the other side of the existing median down Foxborough Drive. So physically, unless the truck decides it's going to drive over curbs onto the incoming lane outbound Foxborough Drive, it cannot happen.
I think that it's important to point out, we asked that this be created to demonstrate that this entire system can handle these very large vehicles. This is proposed to be an apartment community. We don't expect a lot of 18-wheelers coming to the site, but we did ask that he design this so that all anticipated vehicles could be accommodated. There was also a request by Tom Hart that we make certain that the firefighting vehicles can maneuver into the site from coming off of Route 18 onto Foxborough into the driveway in Foxborough. And I know that there was a minor modification to that driveway that Mr. Hart discussed with Mr. Ray. The details we'll put on for the next presentation. Comfortable advising the board that you can and will amend the plan to accommodate Mr. Hart's request.
Yes.
If you could take us to the next.
Well, since we just mentioned Mr. Hart, I will skip over to A6, come back to A5. A6 is the turning movement plan for a fire truck. Now, this particular fire truck, Mr. Hart has asked that we update it to a new truck, and he just gave us the template for it. Certainly we'll do it. We don't anticipate a problem from that, but with the same key crunch points of the inbound of Foxborough Drive, as well as once you get in off of 18, crossing the corners of the site at the angle points of the driveway, we show that the template that we have today for this particular aerial truck can circulate around the building, and in fact can make the maneuver out onto Foxborough Drive should the fire truck have to make a right onto Foxborough Drive. We don't anticipate that to be a need, because if it's here for whatever reason fighting one fire, we don't think it would just then go to the next fire in Foxborough. But physically, it can make that maneuver if need be. That's a fire truck. So I will leave it to the board to decide whether the appropriate signage indicates no fire trucks or not. But we do intend to, as I said before, and as Mr. Pape said before, put signage at the egress to make sure trucks don't make that right maneuver.
What is your third circulation plan?
Backing up one to A5, this is known as Truck Turning Plan -SU, single unit. This represents your standard box truck, a FedEx, UPS, slightly larger than your Amazon delivery vans. And this shows that that single unit truck can make all the maneuvers into and out of the project from 18, from Foxborough Drive, and throughout the internal circulation system of the site.
Companion to the circulation is parking. If you could, let's go back to your third exhibit, and if you could just describe, you've already shared the number of parking stalls, if you could just describe how it has been distributed around the site.
Well, Mr. Raker will describe the architecture of the building. Keep it right up. The main entrance right here in the front lobby, we have provided we call it a loading zone. It's basically a passenger drop-off area, fully ADA compliant, and we have ADA spaces right on either side of that drop-off zone. And then the perimeter of the building, for the most part, has head-on parking at it, as well as a drive aisle surrounding that, and then parking on the outside. We've provided a number of points of ingress to the building, which Mr. Raker will describe from the architectural perspective. But the main entrance in the front, there are 3 stair towers, one off to the northwest, one exiting the center spine of the building towards the pool to the north, and one at the south end of the building. All 3 of those are egress stair towers. However, we have also worked with Mr. Raker to ensure that the one at the south end of the building is ADA compliant, as are the main entrances to the amenity courtyards from the main spine of the building, the one into this eastern or southern courtyard that has patio areas, and the one into the northern courtyard that has the pool area. So there are 6 doors, if you will, to the building, aside from utilitarian doors. And 4 of those 6 are handicapped accessible. And then there's a stair tower in the north end and a stair tower in here that have a small step out of the building. The parking spaces, as I just described, are distributed around with the handicapped in the appropriate location, and the owner will assign ingress-egress controls as they deem appropriate.
I think it's appropriate at this point to say we did, in fact, receive not only the comprehensive report that was authored by Mr. Darji and Vina, and I'm not going to try to say Timothy's last name,
Kalani.
Thank you. For the record, Timothy Kalua Koalana and Alex Metz. I'm going to call him Mr. K.
Okay, that's
Thank
what everybody
you.
else does too.
Okay. So we, in addition to receiving that comprehensive report, we also received Tom Hart's report. Then we've indicated that there'll be revisions to the plan to be compliant with the request at that driveway. But I would ask if you would acknowledge receipt of that report, acknowledge that you've reviewed that report, and that all of the recommendations that appear in that report will appear on the next version of this plan.
That is correct.
Thank you. If we could go to trash collection. There's two parts to trash collection in an apartment building. There's a trash room, that's the architect's responsibility to describe, but there's also the trash storage on site, trash storage and recycling storage on site. If you could describe, steal a little bit of Mr. Raker's thunder about the trash room, and then let's go into what you've designed.
It's not an exciting room. It's a trash room, but there is an internal collection system for the building, and we have provided an exit from the building through a dedicated sloped sidewalk and a depressed curb and a striped-off area in the parking lot, so that at the time of collection, the compactor cubes or whatever recyclable vessels are used from the trash room to come out do not impede any, or get impeded by any parked vehicles. That's to take care of the refuse from the building, your standard solid waste and recyclables. We've also shown in the very southeast corner of the development footprint what we call a trash and recycling enclosure, and that is simply our client has given some forethought and said, what if a tenant decides to discard a mattress, a couch, something large? You're not going to have those bulk items clogging up a trash room, or worse, getting just dumped on the site in an inappropriate and unspecified location. We provided a screened-in enclosure for those bulk items should they become necessary.
If you could confirm that that area also will accommodate recyclable materials.
It will.
We left one off as we were preparing, but I know that you'll be able to handle it. The site plan includes an outdoor recreational area. If you could describe the recreational area that is proposed.
Okay, well, I'm going to not try and steal too much of Mr. Tronco's thunder, because his firm designed a very comprehensive amenity area in the building is, I'll call it an E, sort of, a main spine with three fingers coming off of it, one at the angle just because of the configuration of the property. That creates two development pockets, if you will, for recreation amenity space. The northern one has not only a pool with a pool deck around it, but also a grilling area and a patio, which is tucked in, wrapped by the building here, so protected from the exposure to the front and leaving the amenity space aimed towards the parking lot. And in the southern notch, if you will, of the building, there are paver patio areas. I believe they're going to be used possibly for sitting and or congregation areas, but I would leave the details to Mr. Tronco.
Okay. We discussed signage at the outset, two monuments. The details will come from Mr. Tronco. I would ask if you could confirm to the board that you've had an opportunity to review the report that was issued by the professionals and had an opportunity to review that report with the professionals.
I have.
Are there any of the technical requests that are made in that report that you cannot abide by?
Not at all.
So you're comfortable advising the board and the professionals that you will address those requirements?
Absolutely.
Very fine. The last is, are there any exceptions or any provisions in there that are not applicable to the application?
In the letter?
Yes.
There might be a stray comment here and there that might not apply, depending upon how certain things are interpreted. There was some question about applicability of a setback ordinance, which we discussed and agreed upon. It does apply. So to the extent that there's a difference of opinion, we will work it out to the satisfaction of the professionals, not to my satisfaction, but to your board's satisfaction.
Mr. Chair and board members, that concludes the direct presentation of the design engineer's testimony. He is available for your examination and your professional examination at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Pucci, for your presentation. Mr. Dargy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Pucci pretty much agreed to all. Our report is dated August 12th, and it is 17 pages and 126 comments. And he agreed to address all of our comments, so there's not a whole lot that I need to ask him. We did ask for certain testimony, And Mr. Pucci did provide just about all the testimony that we'd requested. So I don't have anything specific for Mr. Pucci at this time, but certainly I reserve the right to ask additional questions as we move along with the hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Dargy. Mr. Watt?
I don't have any questions because questions related to variances I will hold off. During the course of the testimony, if I have any additional questions for Mike, I'll definitely ask Mr. Pucci.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fire Marshal Hart?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me go to the board on my left. On my right. I got a couple things, maybe some, oh, go ahead, I'm sorry, Roseanne.
I believe too, but I would feel much more comfortable if Mr. Raker, the architect,
He's holding
answered
up,
that question.
he's holding up 2 fingers. We'll get him up here and put it on the record.
Okay. I got a couple. You said the right turn's going to be restricted out of the project onto Foxborough Road, which would be in the upper left of that. How are you going to restrict it other than the signage? Well, let me, in fairness, sir, those in the audience, we're going to have a public portion.
Yes.
And for those that can't see me, I'll stand up. So I would just ask for some decorum. Let's not interrupt these professionals who get paid big money to do this. I know you all have interests. We're volunteers, you're citizens. We want to hear you as well. But please, let's not interrupt. You may have dislike or like. Either way, I don't know. But let's save that for the public portion. I would truly appreciate that. Thank you all. Sir?
So one thing we did do was to reduce the outbound radius on the right-hand side to make it more difficult for a WB50 to make a right-hand turn. We can shrink that even further. We can work with Mr. Dargy and his traffic engineer in his office to try and make it physically extremely difficult, if not impossible, for anything short of a car to make the turn.
So it's not channelization by any curbing
We also
or...
have a competing interest from Mr. Hart to make sure
Well,
that
that's-
we can make a fire truck safe. So
I understand that. That's...
balance the two. So it boils down to signage and enforcement.
Enforcement by?
Presumably the police department, but
You and I both know that doesn't work.
Mr. Hart yelling at me to make it larger.
I understand. You've answered the question.
I will do what the board directs.
No, you've answered the question.
The goal is to accommodate the community behind us.
I know.
There's no engineering or planning reason not to have an unrestricted driveway. But we have neighbors that want it, so we'll design it so that it's a restricted driveway.
Just curious how you're going to do it.
Yeah.
You said the water, the quality and quantity is fine, but you can't recharge it, right?
That is correct.
The soil is impermeable.
That is correct.
Maybe you could explain to the board what happens then.
Well, what happens is what happens today. The water sits on the surface. It does not infiltrate into the ground. It runs over the surface into the existing basin that's there today. It fills up that basin in larger storm events and then goes through the outlet structure and into the piping network that I described before. That same direction will happen in the future. However, it will not only be cleaned by the biofiltration swales, it'll also be reduced in quantity by the existing detention basin that's there today, and that basin will be supplemented and enhanced.
For the sake of transparency for the people here, would any of that water ever discharge back onto the next street or their properties?
No, it could not make it to their properties without overtopping this basin first.
I just want you to put that on the record for them.
Thank you.
I understand how it works. Thank you for answering it. The trash room. There's a trash room that is there a general collection throughout the building, or is there one point? Do we know how that works, or do we get the next witness?
Yeah.
Okay.
Two more witnesses.
Okay.
We'll
That-
handle
that-
that.
that's-
I did provide a way for his collection in the building to get out.
We'll wait for the next witness. Is there any dumpsters on the property, on the site at all?
No.
So there's an enclosure that is what?
For both.
I know what it's for. What, it's just paved?
Concrete pad with
Okay.
a fence around it and a gate in front of it.
And the purpose would
The
be
press
for,
curb, as
the
Mr.
purpose would be for bulk?
Well, if someone throws out a mattress, throws out a couch.
And then who removes that? The standard carting company, the cartage company? Okay.
It's private car.
All right, thank you very much. We've reached the point here at 10. I know you wanted to do another witness. Let me ask one question. If you don't mind, Mr. Pape, I'm just going to ask a question. If you don't want me to do it, I will not. I'm going to ask the audience just by raising their hands how many people want to speak this evening. If that bothers you,
Mr. Chairman, it is your meeting to run.
okay. And I want you to agree. Thank you.
Thank you for the
I just
courtesy.
want to know. I want to get a sense of timing for all those in the audience tonight. And we normally go to 10:30. So I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10. There's probably about a dozen, Mr. Pape. So I fear that a dozen might take up this next half hour. Would you be so inclined as to just hold off on the next witness and let's let them air their concerns or questions before we go to the next witness and not get lost on the matter? I just think we're going to crunch too much time together. And I don't want these people out here any more than I want to be out here late. So I think most of them, they look like they have jobs and they got to get up in the morning.
Mr. Chair, as a land use attorney, I see a certain logic. I see a certain logic of having certain witnesses testify and then have the questioning after it. But as a chairman of a zoning board in a community, your perspective is not mine. I defer to yours.
Well, I appreciate that, and we've had a relationship for many years while I've sat here, and you've prosecuted cases here. So I truly appreciate that, and I really would like to do that for the benefit of the citizens.
Got it.
All right, thank you. There's not going to be any further testimony tonight. You're not going to hear any other witnesses, so if you're watching at home or those here. However, what we're going to do is have a public portion. And that public portion is going to be limited to what you've heard here tonight of questions that you may have from what the witness, who's a professional engineer, may have said, or what you may have a concern about this project, or perhaps you want to stand in favor of something. Either way, you're entitled to do so. When you come up, there's going to be a microphone here. You're going to have to speak into it. It's a directional microphone. So hold on, just so we have the rules here. When you come up, the board attorney is going to ask you to identify yourself, spell your name. He's going to swear you in. So you'd be under oath as to what you're saying is your concern and is the truth. As long as everybody knows the ground rules, we're going to move forward on this matter. I'm opening the public portion at this time. Sir, in the coat, jacket and tie, I assume you want to be recognized first?
That's correct.
All right, sir. Board attorney will swear you in.
I see you've already raised your right hand. Thank you. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to provide in front of this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
That's correct, yes.
Can you just state your name and then state your address?
William A. Miller. I am actually an attorney from Freehold. I represent the Foxborough Village Board of Trustees, the Homeowners Association, and the Townhouse Association. That's the 522 units that are immediately adjacent to this development and include the Stone Ridge Road in Mariposa. And I was just going to confirm that Mr. Pape is accurate in that we've discussed this extensively with the Board of Trustees, and they are philosophically in approval with an apartment building. They were adamantly opposed to the prior application of the gas station and the retail stores. But their primary concern is the right turn onto Foxborough Drive. That is a busy roadway in terms of school buses and the like, and their concerns is going to be the proliferation of traffic onto Foxborough Drive. How do you, Mr. Sullivan, you asked all the questions that I was thinking of anyway, so I, I just wanted to reiterate that point, that that's their biggest concern. There's going to be a proliferation of traffic onto Foxborough Drive, and they're worried about people parking on Stone Ridge. So that's going to be the concerns that the Board of Trustees wants to have the zoning board address. Now, I would like to point out that I don't represent individual unit owners, so they will be also testifying or making their comments. And I know that they have, especially on Stone Ridge Road, the individual unit owners have problems with the sump pump and very high groundwater or very high water tables. So that's another concern that want to be addressed. Mr. Pape has graciously already confirmed that the lighting is going to be directed downward, so there's not going to be the glare toward the individual unit owners. So, and I think I've addressed most of the issues that the Board of Trustees had thought that the zoning board should consider, and that, again, we believe the apartment building is a better solution than the gas station and the retail shops. And I thank you for your time, and I will defer now to other individual unit owners.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Just to answer you, I got a sense that the turning was going to be an issue by a few little...
Absolutely, right. The turning is going to be an issue, and
I asked the question because I wanted to kind of get this going, so maybe we could have a discussion and see where it's going to end up for the benefit of all. And the water question I asked is a normal one that confronts us, and certainly homeowners have an interest in. So I wasn't trying to steal your thunder, but it just happens to be the way to get it going.
your judicial demeanor in asking those questions was appropriate, so it saved me the having to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Thank you for your time.
We appreciate that. Ma'am, if you're going to come up, but once again, the board attorney will swear you in.
Thank you. Do you solemnly swear any testimony you provide in front of this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, can you put your hand down?
Sure.
You just state your name and your address, please.
Veronica O'Brien, 8 Willow Drive. I'm here as a parent, a taxpayer, and I'm also a teacher in the community. So I'm going to do this from a heartfelt perspective. I'm very concerned not only with this development being built, but the one on Poor Farm Road as well. Sorry, I took a few notes while I was here. I know that Mr. Pucci spoke about quantity and quality of water. However, I'm going to talk about our children, both my students and our families. I don't think that we should sacrifice the quality of education for the quantity that we're bringing into our town. I think that we're sacrificing the quality of education. I think that this is something that has really become a problem. I was also a teacher at Cheeseway School when it was closed, and therefore I was moved to another school. Our students are being overflowed. Our classes are at capacity. This is becoming more and more of a problem. And, sorry, I didn't bring my glasses. I didn't know I would be speaking. And with classes already at capacity, we now have Avalon, 99 Bridge, homes being built at Glenwood. Just this school year alone, we've already received 17 more students at my current school than we had last year. And it's only the second week of school. So I would like to see what's going to be done for schooling for these children, because this is going to be an increasing problem, and our schools cannot accommodate the new students. And therefore, it affects the bottom line as taxpayers.
Well, there's no doubt if I thank you for your comments, and I'm empathetic to what you're talking about, but clearly there would, I would guess, be an increase in student population as a result of it. They do mathematical formulas for that. I'm sure someone's going to bring that up at some point.
I think that that's something, I don't mean to disrespect you, but I think that that's something that needs to be addressed.
Well, it will be in statistical language that's created by, is it RSI? Not RSIS.
Usually, the planner prepares a community impact statement.
Community impact.
The number of school kids that are generated by a project are based on multipliers that have been established by Rutgers. And we have asked questions and justification on the community impact, but I believe the planner would be testifying to that.
Thank you for your question and comments. Next, sir.
Good evening. My name is Steve Backman, 17 Stone Ridge Road. I am on Lot 50. I'm directly adjacent to the proposed project.
Mr. Backman, can you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear that any testimony you provide in front of this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. And thank you for putting your name
I'd
into
like
the
to
record.
start off for a third time to reaffirm to Mr. Pay people not get the pushback that he got for the gas station. So I want to get that off the table right away. But I do have a question for Mr. Pucci. It's a little confusing. I'm not able to see what you were pointing at when you were describing to the board, but you seem to have had two different layouts, and the locations of the buildings are in two different spaces, if I'm looking at it correct. One looked like it was much further to 18, and the other looked like it was pushed back substantially, like in this one. Do you know what the location, with regard to Route 18 is?
The location in all plans is identical.
Yeah, they're just going to be different colorations.
It's just that I was not able to see that.
I think in fairness to you people, I'm going to ask, hopefully, that when we come back, that people use a pen so the audience can see where you're referring to. We can see it, unfortunately. We get these plans ahead of time. You people don't. So I'm going to ask them to use a laser pen next time, if that's possible, Mr. Pape. And for your professionals, so the citizens here can understand where we're talking about. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead, Mr. Brackman.
No problem. But the other reason why I asked that is because if I read correctly, you were looking for a variance for a setback. Did I not read that correctly?
There is bulk variance relief as part of the application.
Okay, so that means that you're actually trying to push it more forward to 18.
We are.
Okay. All right. End of that. The other issue I wanted to bring out is, where is the actual location for the trash collection? Not from the building, but out in the parking lot. There has to be a facility for a garbage truck to come pick it up.
There's two. There's one. There's two. One for materials that will come out of the trash room, and I'll ask that Mr. Pucci identify that. And then there is the actual enclosure where the bulk material would be stored. This tan strip right here.
Could you just turn that around, Miss?
I know one of my.
Oh, they have one? Oh, perfect.
You want me to hold that with you so that they can see?
Mike, you want to use this mic? Mike.
You might have to stand a little closer to kind of get.
Mike, here. This one's better.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, so this little gray or tannish color right there.
Okay.
That is the main hallway running down the center of the building here. That is where the trash will come out of the building and get picked up by a garbage truck that will stop right in front of the striped off area of the parking lot where there will not be a car.
Okay. I was just looking for the relation to the homes behind there.
And then, well, there is a second location up here, right there, that dot that is in the middle of, that is a fenced-in concrete pad that will have the bulk storage of the occasional discarding of, as I said, a couch or a mattress, something large.
But that won't be the regular weekly garbage pickup?
No.
Okay.
And that will also be by private carting. It won't sit there forever.
Okay. We're also concerned about things that can create a situation with rodents and so forth. Okay, the other thing is it's a huge concern with water. And you addressed the fact of the runoff. And even though you referred to a plan that was approved 40 years ago, Mr. Pape also alluded to the current codes that need to be met. But there's two issues here. As far as and I don't need an answer. It's a comment that needs to be addressed, okay? We all are very well aware of the increase in the intensity of the storms that we're getting. For something that was approved 40 years ago, and the ground is supposed to have a certain amount of absorption, and to go, in that route, I'm not so sure that having all that grass area now, which is very absorbent, covered by concrete and pavement, is going to achieve the same ability to absorb the rainwater that we get. That's with the rainwater. It's part A. Part B is all the houses, I'm one of them, on Stone Ridge, there is a high water table. And we have discussed in previous settings that that property has been cleared several times over the years. I lived there since 1985. I'm an original owner. Every time that property is cleared, my sump pumps, 2 of them in the house, are running the cycling every 5 minutes. Now the vegetation is back because the area hasn't been worked on in some time, and my sump pumps cycle maybe every hour. The inclusion of the direction of groundwater must be addressed in any project that goes on this property. The last time this was discussed, and I know one has nothing to do with the other, but the insistence on explanations for runoff water was the only thing that seemed to have gotten addressed. I'm talking about groundwater. There's a high water table there. There's a swale in the buffer zone behind my house. It covers probably 4 or 5 houses on Stone Ridge. That swale has been not anybody's fault other than people that want to use it as a dumping ground. Contractors have dumped concrete there. Landscapers have dumped landscaping material there, and the lawn clippings and things like that. And that, in its current state, is not able to function properly. So that needs to be addressed. But knowing that that swale is there and constantly full of water, if anybody could just walk through there, you're going to get water. You're going to get a foot of water on you. That needs to be addressed. The direction of the groundwater, not the runoff water.
Okay. Let me answer that for you real quick, and I can't give you a technical answer, but I can tell you what happens. That man's a professional engineer. He works for the client. The man on the end is Mr. Darji. He's a professional engineer. He works for the township. Yep. The two have to agree.
Yes.
And their licenses and their certifications are on the line.
Yes.
He can't lie. He can't lie. So when this engineer spoke earlier and he talked about how the infiltration and the water system would work, and he said, and Mr. Darji will hold me to it. So,
Runoff water they were
well,
talking about, not groundwater.
I understand that. 2 different issues, but what I'm trying to get across is the township is represented by a planner, and there's going to be a planner that comes to speak. We have an engineer, we have an attorney, they have an attorney. So we're going to have full disclosure no matter what. So any questions that you have, we want to hear. Now you're talking about groundwater buildup.
Yes.
Could you go over there? Now, is it on this site?
It's, well, my house is beyond.
Well, why don't you point to where you live, sir? So so there's a street in there, right? Yes. Okay.
But in here is the
Okay.
swell.
Okay. And where does that water lay? In other words, this groundwater? In there.
Well, what happens is when
Go back to the mic, because they can't hear you on TV.
But what happens and it has nothing to do with rain, believe it or not. It has more to do with that property being cleared, because there's a lot of vegetation there now absorbing water. And when that property is cleared, the groundwater level is so high that my property actually my backyard does not fully drain for days.
Okay.
For days. And the sump pumps, which are probably the house should have been built further out of the ground, but it's not. But everybody on Stone Ridge Road has sump pumps that are running they're cycling every 5 minutes.
All right, now I have to find out a technical question. Sure. Mr. Dargy, is that area part of their lot, or is it part of the homeowner's lot?
It's part of the applicant's lot.
It is part of the applicant's lot. Okay.
We're talking about the swale area that's.
Okay. I don't know where the lot lines, where the property line ends there. That's why I asked that question, because I don't know whether it's the responsibility of the homeowners association or the applicant.
My lot ends, I'm guessing, a good 30 feet before the swale. Maybe more.
That's about right.
Can we address that and look into that, Mr.
So the swale isn't being, I mean, the applicant isn't proposing any work within the swale, but certainly they're permitted to maintain the area as far as, cleaning refuse and all that. And then I guess one good thing about the property actually being occupied is it's their property, they'll be able to maintain it, and they'll also be able to police it. No, I'm talking about the refuse and all that in the swale.
There should be a system to, when it's excavated for their construction, to direct the groundwater so it doesn't flow towards Stone Ridge Road.
So
there are systems available to do that.
So and I guess I should let Mr. Pucci explain his design, but the stormwater management system itself actually, and before you tell me it's runoff water again, let me finish. Yeah. the stormwater management system itself, the way it's designed, consists of a perimeter bioinfiltration swale system, and that's actually being excavated out, and it actually collects water. It has an underdrain system, and that's the only real way to manage at least shallow groundwater, is to have some sort of a conveyance system. The other stuff that can get done is the actual piping itself can also have either an underdrain or have a stone bedding that serves to drain that water away as well.
Stone bedding would clog up. I happen to be a contractor, been for 30 years, so I'm very well familiar with this. Stone bedding gets clogged up. You have a lot of clay in the ground. Mm-hmm. Stone bedding will be clogged within 3 or 4 years. So that's not a good remedy for this. I don't have the answer, but I'm just bringing it up because it needs to be addressed, because after something is built, that will affect several houses, and that's not supposed to happen. We want this project to go forward, but we don't want it to adversely affect all the houses on Stone Ridge Road.
Mr. Pape?
Yeah, I'm listening, and I think the points are excellent and well made. Asking Mr. Pucci to shoot from the hip, and I think the right thing to do is you're going to carry us to another meeting. Yep. Mr. Pucci and Mr. Dargy can discuss it in greater detail. There certainly are mechanisms that can be incorporated into the plan, and we'll address them.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Pape. Anything else, Mr.
I just have a couple more things. We'll make this very quick, because I know a lot of the people want to talk. For safety, we need to have a fence, solid fence, similar that was put on, at Avalon, that would not only prevent people from running through the bushes onto the properties.
Where are you talking about the fence, sir, so we know?
At the end of their property line here.
Okay.
To protect the houses on Stone. That would prevent lights that come in the middle of the night. It would, and more than anything, it would be safety. People running through the backyards.
What's fine?
The last thing that I want to discuss is traffic. I know that it was discussed before, but what was not brought up is when you make that right turn out of the proposed exit onto Foxborough Drive,
yep,
it's very close to Stone Ridge Road, and on that corner is a school bus stop. If you make a left and go another half a block is Diamond Lane, there's another school bus stop. Very often, that traffic is backed up into the turning lane off 18, because there could be 20, 30 kids. The parents come with their cars, they park, they wait for the kids to get off. The bus doesn't move until all the kids are cleared. It's a significant amount of waiting time. I don't know. Again, I don't know what the answer is, but any introduction of more traffic in a right turn out of the development, out of the new proposed development, would be definitely detrimental. In addition to the moment that you turn onto Stone Ridge, it's not a very wide road. If people start to park on both sides of the road, you're not getting a truck through the middle.
They're going to.
Safely, anyway.
I understand. They're going to have a traffic engineer. His name is John Ray. He's testified here and probably all over this state.
I'm familiar with that. And
Okay.
here's
He will not testify tonight, but he will be here the next.
here's a factual number. I know what is going to be testified. I don't know the exact number, but here's a factual number. Today, an average day, from 5 to 6:30, 75 vehicles pass that intersection of Foxborough Drive and Stone Ridge Road. That's an average day. It increases at 3 o'clock when the buses are there. I wasn't home early enough to count. It's not the first time I stood on the corner. Myself and other neighbors have been standing on that corner counting traffic for several years.
This is the intersection of where?
Foxborough and Stone Ridge Road. Because immediately, first of all, that where they are proposing their exit, it's only 2 or 3 car lengths from the corner of Stone Ridge Road. You make an immediate right, another 2 or 3 car lengths is the traffic that comes out of Silver Lane.
Okay.
And you go the other way, another half a block, as I mentioned before, is Diamond Lane.
Okay. You used the number 75. Did you physically do a count, and what time?
Absolutely.
What time did you do that from?
Between 5 and 6:30 today.
5 and 6:30 today, right?
Today.
That's PM, right?
Yep.
Is that PM?
Yes.
Okay.
And similar numbers have been myself and some of the neighbors that
Well,
have stood on.
I don't doubt what you're saying. I just wanted to have the time so we could try and verify that with Mr.
That's
Ray.
all I've got. Thank you very much for
Thank
your
you.
time.
Thank you for your interest and your time, sir.
Hi, my name is Judith Matola.
I'm sorry. Hold on. The board attorney is going to swear you in, ma'am.
Do you solemnly swear any testimony you provide before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You can put your hand down. Just state your name and your address, please.
Judith Matola, 27 Mariposa Place.
I'm sorry, Judith?
Matola, M-O-T-O-L-A.
And the
Okay.
address, I'm sorry.
27 Mariposa Place. My concern is, I'm sure everybody agrees here, we all agree, we don't want a gas station. So that's it. So if this is our next best bet, then this is what we got. But my concerns are, again, with the traffic, you have only 120 apartments, you only have one exit out onto Route 18. So are we having a problem that these cars from this development are going to come out onto Route 18 between where you have that first traffic light where the cars come from Walmart? So to me, that seems a little...
I think there's 2, ma'am. There's one coming out from Foxborough, and there's
Well,
one
that's my
direct.
other thing.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm coming on 18 and I live Mariposa, so I'm coming to 18, I'm making the right and then making a left. So now do I have to worry about a car coming across me as I'm coming down here? Then you have the cars coming across from Walmart. Now, we all know that there is, when you come out of Walmart, the left-hand turn, don't make a left. Come on. You know, you're going to put a sign up, it's not going to work. I understand they want to build something, it's their property. We all understand this, but we live here, I've lived here since 1995, and these are certain issues. You also talk, like the lady said, about the schools. We know you're going to have on Route 9, the Schumeister or something, you're building how many apartments and, a whole big development over there, so you're going to have more school. My concern, like they said, coming into Foxborough, the school buses, okay? The other way into Foxborough development is you come through 9. Are these people now going to come through Route 9 to come into the development because you say you're going to give them an access onto Foxborough Drive? So are they going to come now? They'll find a way to come through Route 9 to get into development. And then if you only have a certain number of spots dedicated, like the people who are behind it, I'm a little further onto Mariposa, where are all these cars going to go? Now, I know in the development, if somebody has a party, they're parked 2 sides of the street, you have to wait for the cars to come back and forth, because these are not 2-lane roads to come in and out of development. So these are the concerns. As we say, we understand something, they want to build something, it's their property, we get that, but you have to take into consideration, like I said, how long we've been living there and the impact to us on this type of traffic, the amount of people. Are they going to now come into our development to figure out how to get onto Route 9 if they only have one exit coming on 18 or making the jug handle to come around on 18. If they can come through 9, they're going to come through our development. Because I'm sure they're not going to go up to the hospital, make a left, make a U-turn, and come around 18 to get into development, their development. So that's what I got to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, ma'am. We're at 10:30, so I'm going to ask people to be brief in your comments so we can wrap this up.
My name is Leonid Finkelstein.
Leo, did you say? Leo?
Leonid Finkelstein. Lenny.
Lenny, okay.
Can you raise your right hand, sir? Do you solemnly swear any testimony you give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Can you just state your address?
It's 15 Stone Ridge Road. That's exactly across the pool that they're going to be building over there.
Okay.
So basically, my concern is, especially number one, is the fence, because I don't want you have each house that they're building right now. It's at least 100, 120 apartments, right? 2 people in each house, about 300-400 people coming to my backyard for coffee or for tea. You know what I'm saying? Because they
120.
can easily walk in through the bushes. That's number one. Okay, and the water, like Steve said, it's ridiculous over there. As soon as they're gonna do that, we're gonna float over there. Every 5 seconds, my pump is working over there. Okay, my house is the only one. The first house on the left-hand side. Okay. So basically, I don't need neighbors over there just crossing into my house.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. We've taken note of that. Go ahead, sir.
Do you solemnly swear any testimony you give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir. Can you just state your name and your address?
My name is Mark Gianchetti. I live at 3 Stone Ridge Road, Foxborough. I just have a statement.
You got to spell your last name for the record, sir.
Gianchetti, Mark with a K. Just a statement. I think whoever is voting on anything to do with any of this, whether it be the planning board, the zoning board, any board, it would be remiss of any of you not to do 2 things. To drive north on Route 18 to make the right onto Foxborough Drive, and as you're making the right going 50 miles an hour, worrying that you're not going to hit anybody coming across Marlborough Road, now you also have to worry about something, a garbage truck, a fire truck, some kind of truck, a car, coming out of that development onto Foxborough Road. That's your third option, and I'm not trying to be obnoxious, but now let's also look for submarines and helicopters. It's getting to the point where you're doing 50 miles an hour, making a right to merge onto Foxborough Drive, worrying that somebody's not coming across. Now there's, in 15 feet as you're making that right, there's going to be another entrance or an exit. That's accidents waiting to happen. Second version, you're coming across Marlborough Road, coming onto Foxborough Drive. Now you're coming down Marlborough Road, going onto Foxborough Drive. Now I'm watching the person coming north on Route 18, merging with me, and now that third person coming out of that exit or entrance. I don't understand. I see where the 99 bridge is on Old Amboy Road. There's 2 entrances and exits on Old Amboy Road, on the one angle of the triangle, if you will. I don't know why you need the entrance on Foxborough Road. I don't know why there can't be 2 on Route 18. I'm not a traffic expert, but that's an accident, pardon the pun, waiting to happen, and that's my concern. That's it. Just wanted to make mention of that. Again, not a question, not a statement, just I think it would be remiss of you not to literally take your cars and do those 2 things, who's ever voting on this, and say, wow, this is just really too much for the brain to comprehend all at 50 miles an hour. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Just to make a comment on behalf of the board, all board members are encouraged to visit all sites that we take any votes on or sit in judgment of. So I'm sure each and every member of this board is going to do so, including myself.
Thank you so much.
You're quite welcome. Anybody, how many more do I have? Okay, 2? Okay, 3. That's it. That's it.
Can you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear any testimony you give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Can you just state your name?
Marina Kaplan Iosim, IOSIM. I live at 21 Stone Ridge Road, so my yard is or will be directly affected by this construction. In respect of time and everybody's time, I'm not going to repeat a lot of things that have previously been said. I just, for the record, want to state that Additionally, I have a concern about the garbage, which wasn't clearly explained to me. So maybe at some point that can be explained, especially during the summer months, if that's going to be an open container. You know, the smells that come through directly into our yards are significant, as well as, again, you know, the concerns with all the neighbors regarding traffic. And I am not an engineer, so a lot of the testimony that was stated today, I don't really understand, except for the fact that, again, my backyard does not drain well. And so whatever the technical terminology is for the overflow of water, if that can really be addressed. Most of us do have pools on the property. And my concern is also that once the building of this property goes into effect and all the vegetation is removed and there really isn't anything to, you know, right, to absorb the water, and then the testimony that the soil is not absorbent of the water either, I would like to understand whether or not that will affect my pool and whether the pool will be raised by that, aside from, you know, the issues with the basement, so.
Okay. I'm not going to ask the engineer, I'm not going to ask the engineer to answer, but with reference to the garbage is, there's an interior room that all the garbage is stacked in, however they cube it or whatever they do, compact it in, and then that's picked up by an industrial truck, a cartage.
But they said that room is over here on.
That's in the building. Towards the back rear corner is going to be a square, typically like you would see dumpsters in, but it's not going to be a dumpster.
What is
just
that
going to be
back corner that you?
That's going to be a fenced-in area that if you had a chair or you had a broken chair or something, you couldn't put in your garbage can, it would be put back there, a cartage company would remove that. Perhaps a mattress that got stained or anything, you're going to throw it out, you can't put it in the garbage room.
That's here, this.
Back, yeah, yep.
Okay, and is bulk pickup, okay.
Yeah.
And again, the issue of the fence and some type of barrier that can be installed.
And they have taken note, Mr. Papez. I've seen Mr. Pape writing diligently.
Okay, my other question is regarding the timing of the pool, and that whatever area that will be, the recreation area, will there be signage there identifying quiet time? Again, I wouldn't want to be there.
I think that's probably for the planner or one of his other witnesses to discuss. We haven't asked those questions yet because we haven't been presented with time.
Fair enough.
But it's
Thank
a
you.
very good question. I'll write it down.
Thank you.
And are you the last one, sir? Or? Okay.
Can you raise your right hand, sir?
Sure. Ron?
There you go. And do you solemnly swear any testimony you give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Okay. Put your hand down. Just
Ron who? Your last name,
Ron
sir?
Mananice, M-A-N-N-A-N-I-C-E, 36 Mariposa Place. Yeah, so I'm sort of on the other side of Foxborough Drive to the left, equivalent probably in distance to Route 18. So the first thing I'll do is say that I have the water pump problem all the time. I moved in 99 here, wanting a basement, okay? Basement should have never been built in these homes. And I believe members of this board were on the committee to approve basements. So I spent probably around $10,000 at least over the last 20 years, cleaning pipes, changing some pumps, hiring plumbers. Bottom line, no one's perfect, humans make mistakes, but that's the problems of the residents of Foxborough, especially the ones that live in this area. So I don't know, by building a community, what it can do, it's going to do something. And I don't even know what all the professional draining, whatever can be done, could ever rectify that. That's one. That's the main thing. I don't know if it's apples and oranges. I'm sure there was a lot of fight when Walmart was being built across the street. Speaking for myself, I don't see any negative impact from Walmart, and I thought it would be. You know, me and my wife are very concerned. But there is a positive footprint for Walmart, right? Jobs, taxes, convenience, right? What's the positive impact? So when you guys make a decision on this, what's the positive impact to this development? I know they're representing people that own that property, but maybe they made a bad purchase. Maybe they shouldn't have purchased that property. So, but that's not our problem.
So when you make this decision, what's the positive impact by bringing, there's around 500 units in Foxborough, that's around an average of 4 per homeowner, 2,000 people. You're going to increase the property by 15, 20% in population by making this decision. And a lot of snowballing of other consequences. So I appreciate, I never attended a zoning board meeting. I appreciate what you do to protect us from ourselves and our neighbors. But you got to consider this, and it's a tough job.
Thank you for your concern, and thank you for being concerned for your neighbors and taking public interest. There's a woman called Allison Coffin. She is the professional planner of record of who they're going to present to testify. She would be the one who's going to talk about what the positive reason that what this will turn to be for living for other people. She'll put it in her own professional words, probably at our next meeting. So please, I'm writing that down as well. If you don't ask it, I will. Okay. And as far as, I just have one comment. I've heard a lot that this water is already ponding on your properties. So it's not as a result of this applicant's property. No, that I understand. But where's it coming from? No, okay, well, okay. Well, everybody can't talk, see, because there's a stenographer and she can only listen to one at a time. Actually, they can listen to about 5 at a time and get 4, right. Okay. No. It's just a comment, that's all. That we'll have to see. I don't know the topography there. I'm going to go look. And I'm going to see how it goes. I understand. I can't have this two-way with you, sir. Only when you're up here. I'm just not trying to engage you. I'm just trying to make a comment that I'm going to go look, and Mr. Dargy is going to assure us which way the water runs. Okay? Last but not least.
Can you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear any testimony you give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. You put your hand down. They're going to need your name.
Jennifer Bassani. Last name?
Yeah.
Bisani.
And your address?
37 Emerald Lane.
Emerald?
Emerald, Emerald.
Okay.
So my concern was sort of like Miss Veronica O'Brien about our children. We already have 2 apartment buildings that were built 99, right behind Acme, and then also Avalon. And we're already seeing, look, as homeowners, that's like one of the biggest and most significant investments we make in our lifetime. We care about our homes, we care about our neighborhoods, our neighbors, and et cetera. And I just feel like, there's enough apartment buildings up there, and like what the other gentleman said, it's like, what is the incentive? They're not paying the property taxes, they're not bringing any incentives, as opposed to Walmart, which did bring in jobs and revenue into our township. This apartment building, to me, is just, it's not going to benefit us in any way, shape, or form, including like our kids and the students right now. There is an overflow. I did substitute teach for the district for 4 years, and there is an issue. It's a valid issue.
There's going to be a community impact statement issued. Am I correct, Ms. Sawan?
That is correct.
Many of those issues that you just talked about are going to be in that community impact statement. The answer.
Also, kids from these apartment buildings are coming into our development, and HOA cannot keep track of it. It's causing issues in our neighborhood. And they're actually, in fact, their apartment buildings are more secure. They have more security than we do. They don't allow our kids there.
You're talking about some other properties, though, right?
Yeah, our Foxborough.
Okay.
So the kids from these apartment buildings, and another issue was the parking. You guys said there's 120 apartment buildings, 234 parking spaces. We all know most families have 2+ cars. That's not enough. There's going to be an overflow, especially now they have guests. They're going to be parking behind that. They're going to use, streets for, people's residences to use as parking spaces.
All right, I'm sure everyone on the board I can see has been writing. We've taken note of all of the people that have spoken
Appreciate
tonight.
your time.
Well, we appreciate your time for coming out here and having interest, certainly in your own property and certainly in this application. I'm going to close the public portion at this time. I'm going to ask Mr. If you're going to say anything?
No.
Closing statement? Why don't we just get a date?
Mr. Chair, we're somewhere short of halftime. I don't have anything yet to say, other than if you would award us our next hearing date, and
We're going to ask, thank you all for coming if you're leaving. Mr. Pape, we're going to ask Natalie to try and give us a date.
December 1st.
Yes.
12/1?
Yes.
Folks, this next hearing on this matter will be on December the 1st. December the 1st. No additional. There's no additional notice, so it's going to be December 1. We start on time, it's just a matter of how matters go. I can't project that.
I would only ask Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. December 1.
I would only ask, December 1 is, I know your calendar is full. I'm not going to challenge your calendar, but I would ask that you place it at the top of the agenda on December 1 so that we can have a meaningful presentation to you. We do have 4 more witnesses.
I'm going to write that down. 12/1.
Thank you. And
Babe, thank you and all your professionals. For anything else you want to put on the record right now?
just carried without notice or publication?
Yeah, no further notice.
Very fine. Mr. Chair, all board members and professionals, thank you. Good night.
Thank you for enduring, sir. I know I ran late even beyond my terms. I will be off the record on this matter. Board, I don't think we have any further matters to talk about.
Chairman?
We had public comments on this matter. Is there any board members that have any comments to this evening? I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh.
Chairman, I just have a request. There was an email sent to board members asking for a special meeting for the fire company. Yes, there were 2 dates that were circulated. I will truly appreciate it if each one of you could just respond whether you can attend or not.
Perhaps I missed that memo.
What she said? I didn't hear.
The 2 dates are October 13th or October 17th.
13 or 17, is that what you said?
Yes.
Lucky you.
Day to day, it's fine for me to.
13 is on 17 is on Monday. All right, any final comments? Doreen? No. Ben?
No.
Jim? Counselor?
None.
Roseanne? None. Ms. Testaverde, none? All right. Anything from the township? That's it. Someone move for an adjournment, please? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. We stand adjourned. Thank you all for staying late. We tried, but.
I listen.